What if everything you thought was healthy about your mornings was actually putting your life at risk? Emily Carter had always believed she was doing everything right. She was the early bird in her neighborhood, the one everyone admired for her energy, discipline, and commitment to a clean lifestyle. At 62, she had retired from teaching high school English just 2 years ago, yet she was more active than ever. Her morning started at 5:30 sharp. She would spring out of bed, down a glass of salt water, something her grandmother swore by, brew a strong cup of black coffee, and head out for a power walk before most of her neighbors were even awake. She thought she was beating aging. She thought she was extending her life. Then came the unthinkable. On a crisp March morning, as she stretched in her driveway, ready to begin her daily routine, the ambulance siren screamed down her quiet suburban street. They stopped at the Thompsons' house. Jack Thompson, a longtime friend and only a year older than Emily, had suffered a sudden stroke. It didn't make sense. Jack was a runner. He didn't smoke or drink. Everyone said he was in the best shape of his life. And just like that, he was in the ICU, unable to speak, with one side of his body paralyzed. The news shook Emily. She couldn't sleep that night, tossing in her bed and replaying the day's events in her mind. She lay awake, thinking about Jack, but more than anything, she was haunted by one thought: could this happen to me? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily decided to take a hard look at her life. That next morning, she didn't jump out of bed. She sat still, feeling the way her heart thumped in her chest, the way her breath caught in her throat, and the stiffness in her neck. Something about the jolt of her old routine now felt wrong. It wasn't just Jack's stroke. It was the creeping sense that something in her well-oiled machine of a life wasn't as clean and healthy as she believed. She got up slowly, drank plain water instead of salt water, and sat with her coffee instead of rushing out. Her daughter Sarah called that afternoon. "Mom, are you okay? You sound off." Emily told her about Jack. Sarah had read something recently, an article about how certain morning habits could actually triple the risk of stroke, especially after 60. "You should look into it," Sarah said. "It's not just about eating healthy or exercising. It's about when and how you do things in the morning." Emily laughed nervously. "Are you saying I've been doing mornings wrong all this time?" But the question stayed with her. That night, she went online. What she found floored her. Study after study pointed to surprising truths: waking up too fast, drinking caffeine immediately, skipping hydration, early morning exercise, even irregular sleep patterns, all could increase stroke risk in older adults. A sense of betrayal crept in. She had modeled her life after what she thought were gold standard health practices. But science was telling a different story. She came across a headline that grabbed her by the throat: "The morning mistake Elon Musk won't make, it triples stroke risk after 60. Elon Musk. If someone that powerful was paying attention to these habits, maybe she needed to as well. The article laid it out clearly: cortisol, blood pressure spikes, vascular stress, things Emily had never worried about before. She bookmarked everything. Over the next few days, Emily turned into an investigator of her own life. She began documenting her body's reactions. How dizzy she felt when she stood up too fast, how jittery she got with early coffee, how tense her shoulders were after her walks. The signs were there, and they were subtle, but now she was paying attention. She reached out to her doctor and booked an appointment. Dr. Patel was kind but firm. Emily's blood pressure was higher than it had been a year ago. Nothing dangerous yet, but trending up. She asked Emily about her mornings. Emily confessed everything: the salt water, the early jolt out of bed, the walks. Dr. Patel nodded. "A lot of people your age don't realize that your body changes how it responds to stress and timing. You might be doing good things, but at the wrong time. And that can make all the difference." She left the office with a prescription: not for pills, but for awareness. Dr. Patel gave her a list of stroke risk factors and a guide for age-optimized morning habits. Emily felt a strange mix of fear and hope. This was her wake-up call, literally and figuratively. At home, she looked at her morning space, the kettle, the walking shoes by the door, the tall mirror where she stretched. It all seemed so familiar, yet now tinged with danger. She remembered Jack's face in the hospital. She remembered how invincible he had seemed. She couldn't shake the image. She didn't want to become it. That weekend, Emily sat down with Sarah and shared everything she had learned. Sarah listened closely, eyes wide, and then nodded. "You should write about this," she said. "Or talk to the neighborhood. People need to know." Emily wasn't sure. She was a teacher, not a health guru. But she had always believed in one thing, the power of knowledge. If her life could change from a single article, maybe others' lives could too. Maybe Jack's stroke wouldn't be in vain. That night, she opened her laptop and typed, "What morning habits should you avoid after 60 to prevent stroke?" Her fingers flew over the keyboard. She poured out her routine, the science, the shock. The next morning, she woke slowly. She sat on the edge of the bed and did a few light neck stretches. She drank room-temperature water. She let her body wake up before she let her coffee in. She walked in the late morning sun instead of the cold dawn air. It felt strange, foreign, even. But it also felt right. There was a new peace in her steps, like she was walking towards something better. She called Sarah again. "I'm changing things," she said. "I'm not waiting until it's too late." Sarah was quiet, then said, "Mom, I'm proud of you." That made Emily smile. She didn't have all the answers yet. But she had started asking the right questions. That was enough for now. Emily Carter's life had been carved by routine, shaped by the rhythm of schedules and the comfort of predictability. Even as a child growing up in a modest Pennsylvania suburb, she had found peace in structure. Her mother, a nurse with strict habits of her own, woke the family every morning at 6 sharp with the scent of oatmeal and the clatter of pots. Her father, a quiet man with gentle eyes, read the paper at the kitchen table, nodding along to the morning radio. It was in these early impressions that Emily learned the power of mornings. As an adult, she refined her routines like a sculptor chiseling away distractions. For over 3 decades, she rose before the sun to prepare for school, dressed in the same order each day, first her slacks, then her blouse, then the small pearl earrings her late husband gave her for their 10th anniversary. She would pour her coffee, black and strong, and review the day's lesson plans while classical music played softly in the background. Her students, rowdy teenagers and shy introverts alike, often asked how she had so much energy. "It's all in the morning," she'd reply with a proud smile. That rhythm became sacred, even after she retired. Now, with no classes to teach or grades to mark, she still kept the schedule. At 5:30 a.m., her alarm, set to a soft chime, gently nudged her from sleep. She'd sit up immediately, swing her legs off the bed, stand, and head straight to the kitchen where she drank a warm glass of water mixed with sea salt and lemon juice, a tradition passed down from her grandmother who claimed it kept the blood thin and moving. After her salt water, she brewed her first and only cup of coffee for the day, sipped it by the window while watching the first signs of daylight break across the cul-de-sac. Then came her walk, 30 brisk minutes around the neighborhood, rain or shine, nodding to the few early risers she passed. It wasn't about burning calories. It was about honoring the day. It was about doing something before the world started asking for things. This was Emily's haven, her armor, her identity. That was why Jack's stroke had hit so hard. If it could happen to him, it could happen to her. She began to reevaluate. But reevaluating didn't come easily. To question the very things that had brought her balance for decades felt like treason. Her routines were more than habits, they were rituals, lifelines. And yet, looking back now, she realized that she hadn't been feeling as energized as before. Over the past year, there had been warning signs. A little more fatigue in the afternoons. Headaches that came and went like whispers. Moments of standing up too fast and feeling the room sway slightly. She had brushed it all off. Part of aging, she told herself. Everyone slows down. But what if those signs were her body pleading for change? Her relationship with Sarah had been steady but distant in recent years, mostly due to the pace of their lives. Sarah, a tech consultant living in Boston, often called during the evenings, but Emily would already be winding down by then, book in hand, phone on silent. Since retiring, Emily had also pulled back a bit from her old social circle, preferring quiet to noise. Still, she had close ties to a few people, like Margaret from the local library, who she met for tea once a week, and Donna, her old colleague from Roosevelt High. But since the pandemic, even those get-togethers had slowed. Her world had shrunk, gently and without her noticing. That shrinking, combined with her rigid routines, had created a kind of bubble, one that gave her the illusion of control. She hadn't realized how fragile that illusion was until the morning Jack collapsed. That morning shattered something in her, broke the spell. When she spoke to Sarah about it later that week, her daughter listened carefully. "Mom, I've been reading about this too," Sarah said. "People over 60 are at higher risk of stroke, and it's not just about diet and exercise anymore. It's when and how you do things, especially first thing in the morning. There's this research coming out about cortisol spikes, orthostatic hypotension, and even how certain kinds of hydration or caffeine timing can affect blood pressure dangerously." Emily had raised an eyebrow. "So you're saying my sacred coffee might be hurting me?" Sarah didn't laugh. "I'm saying your body doesn't process mornings like it used to." Emily had thought about that conversation non-stop. And in that reflection, she realized just how much of her identity was tied to these habits. Her late husband, Paul, had always teased her for being predictable, even when they were dating. "You probably have a bedtime alarm inside your brain," he'd joke. They had built a life around their shared routines, weekend pancakes, evening walks, crossword puzzles on Sundays. When he passed suddenly from a heart attack 7 years ago, the routines were what got her through the grief. She clung to them like a rope in a storm. They helped her feel normal. They helped her survive. But now, the rope was fraying. The more she read, the more alarmed she became. Scientific studies from major health journals outlined how sudden changes in posture after waking could trigger blood pressure spikes, which, in vulnerable individuals, could lead to strokes. One particularly sobering study linked excessive early morning caffeine consumption to increased vascular stiffness in older adults. Another connected high sodium intake upon waking, like saltwater drinks, to amplified stroke risk in people with undiagnosed hypertension. All these years, Emily had taken pride in her efficiency. She had built a system that allowed her to move quickly through the day. But efficiency was not the same as safety. And safety was not the same as health. What frightened her most was realizing how little she actually knew about her own body now. It was like waking up in a house you'd lived in for decades and discovering that the wiring was old, the foundation slightly cracked, the pipes rusting beneath the walls. She needed to learn how to live in it again. One morning, instead of walking immediately after coffee, she decided to sit on the porch and listen to the birds. It felt foreign at first, like she was wasting time. But she breathed deeply and noticed how her heart didn't pound as hard, how her head didn't ache later that afternoon. She began replacing the salt water with plain water, sipping it slowly while journaling. She started sleeping with the blinds slightly open, allowing the natural morning light to wake her gradually rather than with the jolt of an alarm. These were small changes, barely noticeable to an outsider, but they felt seismic to Emily. They felt like rebellion against her old self, and at the same time, like a return to something more authentic. The emotional weight of the transition surprised her. She cried one morning after skipping her walk, feeling as if she had betrayed a friend. But she reminded herself, this isn't punishment. This is protection. It was Sarah who eventually helped her name the feeling. It's grief, Mom. You're grieving your old self. But that doesn't mean your new self can't be strong, too. That insight struck deep. Emily had always thought of aging as a slow decline, something to battle against. But what if it was more like a metamorphosis, a chance to become something wiser, more in tune, more resilient? That week, she pulled out old photo albums. She saw herself at 35, holding Sarah at the beach. At 50, standing on stage at a school assembly. At 60, smiling at her retirement party. Each version of herself had needed different things. Each one had adapted. Now, at 62, it was her turn again. She decided to speak to Dr. Patel more frequently. Together, they adjusted her routines with medical backing. She began monitoring her blood pressure at home, keeping a diary. She learned about circadian syncing, and how aligning morning activity with hormonal patterns could improve not just stroke risk, but mental clarity and emotional balance. With each new adjustment, Emily felt like she was adding armor, real armor this time, based on truth, not habit. Her mornings were quieter now, gentler. She no longer rushed to beat the sun. Instead, she welcomed it. She listened more, to her breath, to her body, to the rhythm of the day unfolding. And as she did, she began to realize something profound: control isn't about force. It's about harmony. It's about knowing when to let go and when to hold on. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is change the very things you thought you couldn't live without. The morning she nearly fainted changed everything. It started like any other day. The soft chime of her alarm, the chill in the room before the heat kicked in, the familiar stiffness in her knees as she swung her legs over the edge of the bed. But when Emily stood up too fast, the world spun. It wasn't just a momentary wobble, but a sharp, dizzying swirl that forced her to grab the dresser for balance. Her vision blurred at the edges, her heart thudded like a hammer against her ribs, and her mouth went dry. It passed after a few seconds, but the memory of it lingered like smoke. She sat back down, trembling. Her breath came in short, shallow puffs as she waited for the ground beneath her to stop swaying. That had never happened before. She was sure of it. She reached for the water bottle on her nightstand and took a few slow sips. Her pulse began to settle, but her mind was racing. Was this the beginning? Was this her warning? She stayed seated for several minutes, too shaken to go about her usual routine. No salt water, no fast steps to the kitchen, no coffee brewing while classical music played in the background. Just silence, and the feeling that something inside her had shifted, like a gear slipping out of place. She finally stood up again, slower this time, and walked carefully to the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale, the lines around her eyes deeper than she remembered. She looked tired, not the usual kind of tired, but something more worn down, like the fatigue was coming from inside her bones. She pressed her fingers to her temples and whispered, "Okay, that's enough. Enough pretending she was invincible. Enough assuming that just because she'd always been healthy, she always would be. Enough brushing off signs that her body was asking for attention." She cancelled her walk that morning. Instead, she sat at her dining table with her laptop and searched for answers. The same terms kept appearing: postural hypotension, early morning blood pressure spikes, stroke risk in aging adults. The medical language was dense, but the message was clear. Standing up too quickly after sleep, especially for older adults, can cause a sudden drop in blood pressure, reducing blood flow to the brain and increasing the risk of dizziness, falls, or even stroke. The advice was simple: take time to transition from lying down to sitting, then from sitting to standing. Breathe. Let your system adjust. Emily rubbed her temples again. How could she have missed this? It seemed so basic, so fundamental, and yet it had never occurred to her that rising too fast from bed could carry such risk. For 62 years, no one had warned her. Not her doctors. Not her wellness books. Not even the lifestyle bloggers she followed. It was as if a whole chapter of health had been hidden from her, a chapter specifically meant for women like her, older, disciplined, active, but uninformed about the silent changes happening inside their bodies. That afternoon, she called Sarah. Her daughter answered quickly, voice bright but tinged with concern. Emily recounted the dizzy spell and everything she'd learned since. Sarah's tone changed immediately. "That's not normal, Mom. I mean, it happens to people, but it's not something you ignore." Emily agreed. "It scared me." Sarah exhaled. "Good. I mean, not that you were scared, but that you're taking it seriously. This is how we prevent the big stuff. You know that, right?" Emily nodded, even though Sarah couldn't see her. "I know." They made a plan. Emily would get a full checkup, including a blood pressure monitor for home use. She'd also start keeping a journal, logging her morning routines, how she felt, what she ate, how her body responded. The idea wasn't to panic, but to become more conscious. To reconnect. Because somewhere along the way, Emily had stopped listening. Her body had whispered, and she hadn't heard it. Now it was raising its voice. A few days later, Dr. Patel reviewed the home monitoring results with her. Her blood pressure was not dangerously high, but it was spiking significantly in the mornings. "That's the problem with morning hypertension," Dr. Patel explained. "It's easy to miss if you're only checking during the day. But the highest risk for stroke is actually between 6 a.m. and noon. That's when most people are still adjusting from sleep." Emily sat still, digesting the words. Dr. Patel continued, "It's not just one habit, Emily. It's the combination. Standing too quickly. Caffeine too early. High sodium. Even your morning exercise, it's good, but if you do it before your blood pressure has stabilized, it can backfire." Emily felt her stomach drop. "So everything I thought was healthy, is healthy," Dr. Patel interrupted gently. "But it has to be done differently now. That's the part most people miss. Your body's not the same at 62 as it was at 40. And that's okay. You just have to adjust the timing and the intensity." Emily nodded slowly. She understood. This wasn't a punishment for aging. It was an invitation to change. That night, as she sat on her porch watching the sky shift from gold to gray, she thought about her late husband. Paul had never gotten the chance to make these changes. He had died in his sleep, a silent heart attack. They'd been married for 29 years. Emily had spent many of the years since feeling like she was keeping his routines alive as much as her own. But now she saw the danger in that. Sentimentality couldn't be the only reason to hold on to habits. Not when those habits came with risk. The next morning, she rose slowly, sitting on the edge of the bed for a full minute before standing. She did a few neck stretches, then ankle rolls, things she had dismissed in the past as unnecessary. She walked to the kitchen without rush. She brewed her coffee, but waited 45 minutes before sipping it. Instead of salt water, she drank plain water with a touch of lemon. No sodium. No stress. She opened her journal and recorded everything. There was a new calmness in the house, like the walls were breathing with her. She felt, for the first time in a long time, that she was being truly present with herself. That weekend, she called Donna and Margaret, her closest friends. She told them about Jack's stroke, about her dizzy spell, about what she'd been learning. They listened, intrigued. Margaret confessed she'd been feeling dizzy sometimes, too. Donna admitted she still drank 2 cups of coffee before doing anything else. "I think we all need to talk about this more," Emily said. "No one's telling us this stuff. And it could save our lives." They agreed to meet up for tea the following week, not coffee, tea, and to bring their own experiences, questions, and research. Emily felt a spark of purpose. She had spent her life teaching others, and maybe now, in this new chapter, she would teach again, not in a classroom, but among her peers, her community, her age group. Women over 60 weren't fragile, but they were at a crossroads, and the way forward required more awareness, more conversation, and fewer assumptions. She ended that day with a walk, later in the morning, when the sun was up and her body felt more balanced. She walked slowly, not for speed, but for connection. Every step felt like a promise to herself. She was changing, and that was something to celebrate. Not fear. Her wake-up call had come, not in the form of disaster, but in the gentle warning of a body asking for kindness. And this time, she was listening. Emily stood at the window, watching the early morning light creep across her lawn like a slow tide. The trees swayed slightly in the breeze, and the neighbor's sprinkler ticked rhythmically across the garden bed. It was peaceful, deceptively so, because underneath that silence, her mind was racing. Her body had been calm lately, but her thoughts, those were stormy. She kept thinking about all the years she had lived under the illusion of control. For decades, she had done everything right, or so she believed. And yet here she was, newly aware that the very routines she prided herself on had been quietly, invisibly turning into risks. The morning mistake. That's what the article had called it. A phrase so simple, it seemed like clickbait, but the science behind it was devastatingly real. Her biggest mistake had not been something dramatic. It hadn't been smoking or overeating or ignoring symptoms. No, her mistake had been how she woke up. That's what unnerved her the most. She, like millions of others over 60, had never thought to question the mechanics of rising from bed. The article, which she now had nearly memorized, explained it in clear terms: cortisol spikes between 4 and 7 a.m. Cause blood pressure to rise. For people under 40, this was a normal biological rhythm. But for those over 60, particularly women in postmenopause, that spike could become a dangerous surge. Combine that with dehydration, sudden movement, and early caffeine, and you created a perfect storm, one that tripled the risk of stroke. She had read it twice, then read it aloud to Sarah over the phone. The morning mistake Elon Musk won't make, it had said. Because he pays people to study his biology every day, Sarah had added with a half-laugh. But we don't get that. So we have to pay attention for ourselves. And that was the part that stuck with Emily. No one was watching out for her now. Not Paul, not a boss, not a doctor tracking her day-to-day routines. It was just her. She had to become her own observer, her own scientist. So she did what she knew best: she turned her home into a kind of living experiment. She bought a digital blood pressure monitor and tracked her readings every morning and evening. She kept a journal, meticulously noting what she ate, when she walked, how she felt, and how her body responded. She moved her caffeine to mid-morning. She replaced salt water with plain filtered water and waited 10 minutes after sitting up in bed before standing. The results were almost immediate. Within a week, the dizziness was gone. Her blood pressure readings were steadier. Her energy levels actually improved, and for the first time in months, she didn't get that strange afternoon crash. But something deeper was happening, too. She wasn't just avoiding the mistake, she was rewriting her relationship with her body. For so long, she had seen it as a reliable machine. If she put in the work, eat right, exercise, sleep well, it would perform. But now she realized it was more like a sensitive instrument. It needed tuning. It needed listening. It needed care. One morning, about 2 weeks after the dizzy spell, she ran into her neighbor, Linda, while walking to get the mail. Linda was 68, brisk, and always full of stories about her grandkids. They made small talk, but Emily could sense Linda's usual cheer was dulled. "I just feel off lately," she admitted. "Can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's just getting older." Emily hesitated, then said quietly, "Can I ask you something personal? Do you drink coffee right after waking up?" Linda blinked. Of course. I need it to function. Emily nodded slowly. Me too. But I stopped. I read this article, about how that, combined with getting up too quickly, can increase stroke risk. Especially for us. Over 60. She expected Linda to scoff or wave it off, but instead, her neighbor looked startled. Really, she said. I had no idea. That's when Emily realized just how little this information had spread. Everyone was chasing the latest diet, the best supplements, the miracle workout, but no one was talking about the first 5 minutes of the day. And yet, that's where so much risk was hiding. That night, Emily called Margaret and Donna again. We need to share this, she said. Not just among ourselves. Maybe the community center would let us host a talk. Donna loved the idea immediately. Margaret, always the cautious one, asked, what would we call it? Emily thought for a moment. Then it came to her. The morning mistake. They all agreed. Simple. Memorable. Important. The next few days were a flurry of emails, calls, and planning. Emily drafted a handout, 1 page, with bullet points summarizing what she'd learned. Avoid jumping out of bed. Sit for a minute. Hydrate before caffeine. Delay coffee at least 45 minutes. Skip high-sodium drinks. Monitor morning blood pressure. Know the symptoms of morning hypertension. They added links to studies, tips from doctors, even a few testimonials from others who had made similar changes. When they finally held the event, on a rainy Tuesday morning in the community center's side room, they expected maybe 10 people to show. 30 came. Mostly women, some men, all over 55. Some used walkers, others came in tennis shoes and yoga pants. Emily spoke first, nervous but steady. She told them about Jack's stroke, about her own dizzy spell, about the articles and the science. She shared her own routine, what had worked, what hadn't. She didn't pretend to be a doctor, just a woman who had spent her life learning, and now was learning again in a new way. The room was silent, attentive. When she finished, hands shot up. Questions poured in. What about blood pressure meds? Is decaf better? Should I eat before coffee? Does this affect sleep too? It was electric, people hungry for answers, for a sense of control. Afterward, several people came up to her. You might have just saved my life, one woman whispered. Emily smiled, blinking back tears. That night, back home, she sat at the kitchen table long after dark, sipping warm herbal tea. Her journal lay open beside her, today's entry still unfinished. She looked around at the quiet room, at the soft hum of the refrigerator, the clock ticking softly on the wall. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone. She felt useful. Empowered. The mistake she'd been making every morning for decades had nearly caught up with her. But it hadn't. And now, it wouldn't catch others, because she was speaking up. She picked up her pen and wrote at the top of the page, "Today I made no mistakes. And I helped others do the same." The first time Emily visited Jack in the hospital, she almost didn't recognize him. He had always been the picture of controlled energy, a man who moved quickly, spoke with crisp authority, and power-walked the neighborhood with a stopwatch clipped to his wrist. But lying in that stark white hospital bed, slouched to one side with wires attached to his chest and a nasal cannula feeding him oxygen, he looked small, fragile, and lost. His wife, Linda, met Emily at the elevator and gave her a long, exhausted hug. "He hasn't said a word," she whispered. "He opens his eyes sometimes, moves his hand a little, but that's it. The doctors say he had a moderate to severe ischemic stroke. Right hemisphere. That's why the left side's paralyzed." Emily nodded, unsure if she was ready to see the consequences of everything she had been researching. But there he was, unmoving except for the faint rise and fall of his chest. The silence in the room was suffocating. Machines beeped rhythmically. The air smelled like antiseptic and plastic. Emily sat down beside him and stared at the man who, just weeks ago, had jogged past her house, waving cheerfully. "Hi Jack," she said gently. "It's Emily. I thought I'd come sit with you today." He didn't respond. His eyes were closed, his brow slightly furrowed, as if trying to understand something he couldn't quite reach. She took his hand, it felt cool and limp, and held it for a while, unsure of what else to do. That moment became a ritual. Every other day, Emily returned to Jack's room. Sometimes she read aloud to him, articles, stories, even a chapter from one of his favorite mystery novels. Other times she simply talked about the weather, the neighborhood, or the changes she'd made to her routine. "I stopped drinking salt water," she said once with a chuckle. "Can you believe it? After all these years." Another day, she told him about the community talk, how 30 people showed up, how they were already planning a follow-up. "You're the reason, you know. This whole thing, it started with you." But Jack's silence remained. And in that silence, Emily began to sense something deeper, a warning, a message unspoken. He was living proof of everything she had read, everything she was learning. The sudden onset, the absence of prior symptoms, the fact that it had happened in the morning, all pointed to a silent, lurking danger that had been ignored. She spoke to his neurologist one afternoon, standing awkwardly by the nurse's station as families moved around her. "Do you think it could have been prevented?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. The doctor, a woman with kind eyes and a weary tone, sighed. "It's hard to say with certainty. But yes. There are factors that make strokes more likely in older adults, morning hypertension being one of the big ones. Most people don't even know they have it." Emily nodded slowly. "So getting up too fast, caffeine too soon, things like that?" "Exactly," the doctor said. "The body's under more pressure in the early hours. And if you add stressors, physical or emotional, it can tip the scale. Especially in someone like Jack, who was very active but probably didn't realize how vulnerable he was to sudden vascular changes." Emily felt the knot in her chest tighten. She had seen Jack as a role model. Now he was a reminder of what could go wrong, even with the best intentions. She thought about how many people in her age group were making the same mistakes daily, blindly following routines that felt productive but were quietly raising their risk. It wasn't fair. It wasn't obvious. And it wasn't being talked about enough. On her next visit, she brought a small radio and played a few of Jack's favorite jazz tracks. As the music filled the sterile room, something changed. Jack's fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. Linda gasped softly from the corner. "He heard that," she whispered. Emily leaned in. "Hey Jack. That's Coltrane. I remember you told me once that jazz was the only thing that could calm your nerves." There was no response, but the movement in his hand, small as it was, gave her hope. The next day, she returned with printed copies of her handout from the community meeting. She gave one to Linda and taped another on the inside of Jack's closet door. Linda looked it over with tired eyes. "I wish we'd known," she said quietly. "I wish someone had told us." Emily didn't say it, but she felt the same. If only one article hadn't come across her screen at the right moment. If only Jack had read it before that March morning. If only the world paid more attention to prevention instead of reaction. That night, Emily sat alone in her living room, flipping through an old photo album. There was one picture from a neighborhood picnic, Jack laughing with Paul over the grill, both of them holding up spatulas like swords. That was before Paul's heart attack, before Jack's stroke, before everything began to unravel. Emily traced the edges of the photo and felt the sting of tears. These men had been strong. Reliable. They had walked miles, cut grass, fixed fences, shoveled snow. And yet their bodies had betrayed them. Not because they were weak, but because they had not been warned. She thought about writing an article herself. A real one. Not just a community talk, but something online, something public, something that could reach the people who needed to hear it most. Maybe she could pitch it to the local newspaper. Or start a blog. Sarah could help with that. She had mentioned building websites before. Emily sat down at her computer and typed a title into a blank document, "The Morning Mistake That Nearly Took My Friend." She stared at it for a long time. The cursor blinked, patient and steady. She began to type. She told the story. Jack's routine. Her own. The science. The statistics. She wrote about waking slowly, delaying caffeine, hydrating first, monitoring blood pressure, watching for warning signs. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't preach. She just told the truth. It took her 2 hours. When she finished, she sent it to Sarah. The reply came quickly. "This is powerful, Mom. Let's get this online." Within a week, it was published on a health blog for women over 50. Then it was shared by a local news site. Then someone in her community center's newsletter linked it. Emails started coming in. Messages from strangers: "Thank you for this, I had no idea, I've changed my routine because of what you wrote." And still, Jack remained silent. His condition stabilized, but he didn't speak. He didn't walk. He blinked and moved a finger sometimes, but that was all. Emily continued to visit. She brought music, stories, soft scarves to lay across his lap, poems she thought he might remember from school. She refused to believe he wasn't still there, listening, feeling. One afternoon, as she sat reading to him from her journal, Linda tapped her on the shoulder. "He smiled when you said your coffee's at 10:00 now," she said softly. It was small, but I saw it. Emily turned back to him, her throat thick. "You're still in there, aren't you?" she whispered. "I'm going to keep talking, Jack. I'm going to keep telling people. Because this matters. Because you matter." The next morning, she woke slowly, as she always did now. She stretched in bed, then sat up carefully, drinking her water and watching the sunlight paint the wall. She felt strong. Grounded. But most of all, she felt responsible. Not guilty, responsible. Jack's silence had become her voice. And she would not waste it. The first sign that something had truly changed in Emily's life came one crisp Saturday morning when she declined an invitation to brunch. Not because she didn't want to see her friends, she did, but because the place they'd chosen opened at 7:30 a.m., and she had made a promise to herself: no major activity or food decisions until after her body had fully adjusted to the day. It was the kind of small decision she would have brushed off months ago, but now, it represented everything. A second chance doesn't always come in some dramatic moment. Sometimes it begins in silence, in the hour just after sunrise, in the choice to sit on the edge of the bed and breathe deeply before standing up. It's in the deliberate slowness, the refusal to rush, the protection of one's own rhythm. Emily had learned to listen to the quiet hum of her body's needs, and that awareness was rewriting her mornings, and her life. Her phone buzzed with a text from Margaret: "Brunch missed you today. We talked about your article. Everyone's calling you the stroke whisperer now." Emily laughed out loud at that, alone in her kitchen. Stroke whisperer. If only they knew how much of her journey had been built on fear, fear of loss, of aging, of waking up one morning and not being able to move or speak, like Jack. But if fear had started the journey, it was purpose that now kept her going. She was working on a second article, this one about hydration, and how dehydration in older adults was often overlooked. The working title was "The Hidden Drought: Why Most Seniors Start the Day One Step Closer to Stroke." Sarah had given it a thumbs up and said, "You're turning into one of those health influencers, Mom. Just wait, someone's going to want you on a podcast." Emily wasn't so sure about that, but she had started recording voice notes to herself on walks, shaping thoughts into messages that might help others. She'd even bought a lapel microphone online, just in case. Her voice, after all, had become her most valuable tool, and her story, once so ordinary, had become the kind people paid attention to. One afternoon, while walking at a nearby park, she noticed a woman about her age sitting alone on a bench, tears streaming down her face. Emily slowed, hesitated, then approached gently. "Hi," she said. "Are you okay?" The woman looked up, startled, wiping at her cheeks. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. She waved her hand vaguely. "It's been a hard week. My husband had a stroke. Out of nowhere. One morning he just couldn't speak." Emily sat beside her, heart twisting. "I'm so sorry. That's awful. Do you mind if I ask, how old is he?" 64, the woman whispered. "He was fine. Fit. He even biked that morning. But I think he pushed too hard, too soon. The doctor said it might have been his blood pressure." Emily nodded slowly. "That sounds very familiar. I went through something similar with a friend recently. I've actually been writing about it, what we can do to lower those risks, especially first thing in the morning." The woman looked at her, eyes wide with sudden clarity. "No one ever told us," she said. "We thought we were doing everything right." Emily reached into her tote bag and pulled out a folded printout of her article, which she'd started carrying just in case. "You're not alone," she said. "And you're not to blame. We've just been missing information. But now, we can do better." They sat for nearly an hour, trading stories, quiet moments of understanding, the kind of connection that only forms through shared pain. When they finally stood to part ways, the woman said, "You were meant to be here today." "Thank you." Emily smiled softly. "We all get second chances. We just have to learn how to take them." That evening, she visited Jack. Linda was in the hallway talking to the nurse, so Emily slipped into the room alone. The lights were dimmed, the machine beeping in its usual quiet rhythm. She sat down, placed her hand on Jack's, and began reading the new draft of her article. As her voice filled the room, something flickered in Jack's expression. A twitch at the corner of his mouth. A flicker in his eyelids. She stopped reading, leaned closer. "Jack." His eyes opened. Just a little. Enough to make her sit upright. "Can you hear me?" He blinked. Twice. Deliberately. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "That's yes, isn't it?" 2 blinks for yes. Another 2 blinks. She grabbed his hand, gently but firmly. "Jack, you're still with us. You're fighting, I know. And you're doing so well. Linda's been amazing. The whole neighborhood is thinking about you. You don't have to rush. Just know you're not alone." His fingers twitched again, then stilled. Linda came in, and Emily told her what happened. The nurse confirmed that some responsiveness was returning. It was slow, but it was something. A second chance. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Her mind was racing with possibility. If Jack was coming back, if even a small part of him was reawakening, then maybe others could too. Maybe she wasn't just helping people avoid a stroke but also helping those in recovery find a new way forward. She thought about starting a small support group. Something gentle, community-based. Not just about medical facts, but about morning rituals, emotional resilience, rebuilding trust in the body. She imagined calling it New Mornings, Life After 60. It wasn't just about stroke anymore. It was about hope. The next day, she sat with Sarah over lunch at a sunny cafe and shared the idea. Sarah's eyes lit up. "That's incredible. You should totally do it. And you know what? We could even do a Zoom version, get people from all over. This isn't just a local issue, Mom. It's national. Global." Emily blinked. "You think so?" Absolutely, Sarah said. Everyone wakes up in the morning. Not everyone knows how to do it safely. You've tapped into something universal. That night, Emily wrote the first outline for the group sessions. Session 1, Understanding Morning Blood Pressure. Session 2, Caffeine and Hydration Timing. Session 3, Gentle Movement and Stretches. Session 4, Emotional Effects of Aging and Stress. Session 5, Sharing Your Story. As she typed, she felt a warmth in her chest, not anxiety, not pressure, but purpose. A second chance, indeed. For Jack. For herself. For every person who had ever assumed aging meant decline, instead of adjustment. The next morning, as the sunlight streamed through her window and the birds began their soft, hopeful chatter, Emily sat up slowly, drank her water, and whispered, "Let's begin again." It was the one habit Emily had resisted the longest, letting go of her early morning coffee. Not because she didn't believe the research, not because she doubted the risk, but because coffee had become part of who she was. The warmth of the mug between her hands, the scent curling upward like incense, the first sip that seemed to coax her entire nervous system into motion, these were rituals, comforts, anchors. For decades, she had believed coffee was her superpower, her switch from sleep to action. But now, with everything she'd learned, she saw it differently. It wasn't the caffeine itself that was the problem. It was the timing. Caffeine constricted blood vessels. It raised blood pressure. And in younger bodies, this effect was usually manageable. But after 60, when natural elasticity in the arteries decreased, and morning cortisol levels were already spiking, caffeine added pressure to an already tense system. It was like pouring gasoline on a slow flame. The research was clear. Studies showed that consuming caffeine within the first 30 minutes of waking could triple the risk of cardiovascular events in older adults. The phrase had haunted her since she first read it, the caffeine trap. She remembered the morning Jack collapsed. Linda had told her they'd both had their coffee early, then Jack jumped into the garage to organize his workbench. No food, no water, just a large mug of black coffee and a quick start to the day. By 9 a.m., he was in the hospital. Emily couldn't forget that. She couldn't pretend it was just chance. Still, giving it up had felt like mourning. She didn't go cold turkey, she wasn't reckless. But she shifted slowly, gradually extending the time between waking and that first sip. From 30 minutes to 45. Then to an hour. Then an hour and a half. In that new space, she introduced herbal teas, warm lemon water, light stretching, journaling. It was awkward at first, like walking with shoes on the wrong feet. But slowly, her body adjusted. Then one morning, something surprising happened. She forgot the coffee altogether. Not because she was avoiding it, but because she didn't need it. Her energy felt more even, less spiky. Her head was clearer. The crashes around midday, the jittery tension in her fingers, gone. It felt like a kind of freedom. That week, she posted a short story about it on her new blog. "The Day I Forgot Coffee," she titled it. It was simple, just a personal reflection on how her body had responded to change. She included research links, suggestions, and a personal checklist. To her shock, the post went viral. Comments poured in. "I thought I was the only one who felt better after skipping coffee. This makes so much sense, I've been feeling anxious in the mornings for years. Why don't doctors tell us this? Following your delay coffee method. Already noticing a difference." One comment stuck with her most: "I've had too many strokes and no one ever mentioned morning caffeine. Thank you for this." Emily sat in her living room that evening, heart thudding, not with fear, but with realization. She wasn't just changing her own life anymore. She was giving others a path out of the dark, out of the trap they didn't even know they were in. She started referring to it in her talks as the caffeine curve. She drew it out on a simple graph: cortisol levels at wake-up spiking naturally, then caffeine hitting just as the body was trying to stabilize. "We've all been taught to drink coffee first thing," she'd say. "But our bodies don't need a jolt when we're already surging. They need support. A bridge. Hydration, warmth, breathing. Then coffee. Later. When the system has settled." During one session at the community center, a man in his late 60s raised his hand. "So, when exactly can we have coffee?" he asked, half joking. Emily smiled. "You can still have it. Just think of it as a treat, not a trigger. Try waiting an hour after waking. Eat something light first. And most importantly, hydrate before anything else. Your brain and heart will thank you." A woman chimed in, "I thought I had anxiety for the last year, but turns out it was just how early I drank coffee." Laughter broke out, not mocking, but communal, relieved. They were unlearning together. Week by week, the group grew. Friends brought friends. Neighbors brought family. A woman named Evelyn started bringing her husband, Frank, a retired firefighter who had been skeptical at first. But after one session about blood vessel elasticity and dehydration, he pulled Emily aside. "I never thought about it that way," he said. "My father had a stroke at 63. We all just thought it was genetic. But maybe it was also routine." Emily nodded. "Habits become risk factors when we stop examining them. That's all we're doing here, re-examining." Frank grinned. "So I have to rethink my 4 cups of coffee by 9 a.m. Maybe aim for 1 by 10, she said, smiling. With a little breakfast and a tall glass of water. By the end of the month, people were referring to her sessions as the morning reset. Sarah helped her create a simple online course, complete with checklists, audio lessons, and printable habit trackers. It wasn't flashy, it didn't need to be. It was honest, accessible, and rooted in experience. Emily's inbox began filling with stories from people across the country. A retired teacher from Ohio wrote, "Your caffeine delay helped me finally sleep through the night." A nurse in Florida wrote, "We're sharing your handout at our senior wellness program." A widow in Oregon sent a handwritten note, "I read your article every morning before I do anything else. I lost my husband last year to a stroke. I wish we had known. But I'm doing this now, for both of us." The impact was real. And so was the responsibility. Emily kept researching, kept refining her messages. She worked with Dr. Patel to ensure everything she shared was medically sound. She knew this wasn't just about caffeine, it was about rethinking what healthy really meant after 60. Not just diet and exercise, but timing. Gentleness. Intention. One Sunday, after a walk through the park, Emily stopped by a small cafe she used to frequent. The barista recognized her. "Haven't seen you in a while," he said, handing her a menu. She looked at the rows of coffee options, lattes, dark roasts, double espressos, and smiled. "Do you have any good herbal teas?" He nodded. "Chamomile, peppermint, and ginger lemon." She ordered the ginger lemon and sat near the window, watching the sun arc across the sidewalk. Around her, people sipped their morning brews, scrolling phones, reading papers, chatting quietly. It used to be her rhythm too. Now, it felt like a memory. A good one. But no longer necessary. She pulled out her notebook and began sketching her next blog post, "What We Owe Ourselves After 60. In it, she would write about grace. About the power of slowing down. About how every sip, every step, every breath was a chance to protect the vessel we've been given. Not out of fear, but out of love. A second chance, poured gently, like tea into a warm mug. The body always speaks, it's just that most people stop listening." That was the line Emily found herself repeating again and again as she continued her sessions, blog posts, and one-on-one conversations. It wasn't something she read in a book or heard from a doctor. It came from sitting in silence beside Jack, watching his fingers twitch in response to music. It came from learning how her own dizzy spells had been quiet screams from her vascular system. It came from realizing that most of what we call aging is really just ignored messaging. The body doesn't fail overnight. It whispers first. Emily had begun teaching people to listen. And the more she taught, the more she realized how much she had silenced herself over the years. Not in her voice, she had always been articulate, but in sensation. In pausing. In waiting. She had treated discomfort like an inconvenience to push past. Pain was something to endure. Fatigue, something to outpace. But now, each signal felt sacred. A flicker of nausea meant she was dehydrated. That occasional ear buzz. A mild blood pressure fluctuation. The slight tension in her jaw around 6 p.m. A cue to unwind, not press on. Her awareness was no longer obsessive. It was reverent. A partnership, not a battle. She began encouraging her group to develop what she called a body dialogue. Each morning, before doing anything else, she urged them to ask, "What are you trying to tell me today?" Then wait. Not react. Just listen. Some found it silly at first. "My body's telling me to go back to sleep," Frank joked in one session. But after a few weeks, people started noticing patterns. Evelyn discovered that her left leg tingled when she skipped her stretches. Margaret realized that her anxiety was always worst on mornings after high-sodium dinners. One woman named Claudia shared something that silenced the room. "Every time I had one of my little episodes, what I called dizzy spells, I ignored it. Told myself I was just tired. But they were TIAs. Mini strokes. I didn't know. My body was telling me to slow down, and I didn't listen. But I'm listening now." That was the power of the work. Not fear, not diagnosis, but awareness. Prevention as a relationship. Emily created a chart called "When the Body Speaks," listing common warning signs most people missed. Dizziness, jaw tension, lightheadedness after standing, morning headaches, tightness across the shoulders, hand tingling. None were random. All were early warnings. She shared the chart online, and within days, it was being downloaded thousands of times. People printed it, laminated it, hung it on fridges and bathroom mirrors. It felt radical and obvious at once. One morning, Emily woke with a strange tightness in her left side, not pain, but a slight pulling, as if a string were taut just beneath her ribs. She didn't panic. She didn't ignore it. She sat upright slowly, drank her water, and took her blood pressure. It was slightly elevated. Not dangerously, but enough to pay attention. She lay back down and did deep breathing for 10 minutes. Then took a gentle walk through the house. The sensation faded. The reading improved. But she logged it all in her journal. That afternoon, she told Dr. Patel during a routine check-in. "That's the kind of awareness most patients never reach," he said. "We're trained to look for symptoms after the crisis. You're working upstream." Emily smiled. "It's all upstream, isn't it?" "All of it." She asked him about adding symptom tracking into her workshops. He agreed and offered to join one as a guest speaker. The next week, he stood before 25 people in the community center, talking not like a doctor behind a podium, but like a partner in a conversation. "Your body has no ego," he said. "It's not trying to embarrass you or confuse you. It's trying to help you survive. If you ignore it, it will speak louder. If you keep ignoring it, it may shut down. The earlier you respond, the gentler it can be." It was one of the most powerful sessions yet. People cried. People shared. One woman admitted she had ignored tingling in her arm for months because she didn't want to seem dramatic. A man confessed he had blurred vision every morning but never told anyone because he assumed it was just old eyes. Emily looked around the room and realized this wasn't a seminar. It was an awakening. Later that week, she got a letter from a man in North Carolina who had read her article and started tracking his symptoms. After noticing a recurring morning headache and mild hand numbness, he visited his doctor. Tests revealed early signs of carotid artery narrowing. He was now on treatment, walking daily, and wrote, "You helped me hear what my body was shouting before it had to scream." Emily wept reading it. Quietly. With gratitude. She printed it and kept it in her journal. Not as proof of success, but as a reminder of purpose. Then came the phone call. Linda. Breathless. Hopeful. "Jack spoke today," she said, almost in disbelief. Just one word, "Hi." But it was clear. And then he blinked. 3 times. On purpose. "He's trying, Emily. He's coming back." Emily nearly dropped the phone. Her chest swelled with emotion so fast it hurt. She drove straight to the hospital. Jack was awake, his eyes more focused than they had been in weeks. He looked at her, really looked. She sat beside him, took his hand. "Hi," she whispered. He blinked twice. Then squeezed her hand. Just once. But it was enough. She laughed, cried, laughed again. "You're speaking again," she said. "The body always finds a way, doesn't it?" Linda stood behind her, tears in her eyes. "The therapists say he's improving faster now. Like he flipped a switch." Emily nodded. "Maybe he's been listening to us all this time." That evening, she walked through her neighborhood as the sun sank low, casting everything in golden light. She passed her neighbors, waving gently. She passed the old oak where Paul used to rake leaves. She passed Jack's house, dark now, but no longer silent in spirit. Her own body felt strong. Not perfect. Not invincible. But trusted. She stopped near her front porch and looked up at the sky. "Thank you," she whispered. To the body. To Jack. To the second chances. To the words that came only when silence was finally honored. When the body speaks, it doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It invites. And now, she was listening. Hydration was something Emily had always taken for granted. Growing up in a sunny California town, she remembered drinking water as a natural reflex, a habit ingrained in childhood summers spent at the pool or on hikes. But after 60, hydration was no longer just a matter of quenching thirst, it was a crucial factor in stroke prevention, and one that most people overlooked. During her research, Emily discovered startling data: nearly 75% of adults over 60 were chronically dehydrated. The signs were subtle: dry mouth, fatigue, headaches, but the consequences were far from benign. Dehydration thickened the blood, raised blood pressure, and impaired circulation. In other words, it created a perfect storm for stroke risk. Her own experience confirmed it. The days she drank less than a liter of water by noon, she felt foggy and lightheaded. When she kept hydrated, her mind was sharper, her energy steadier. She remembered a morning last winter when she woke up with a pounding headache and dizziness. She thought it was a migraine, but when she checked her hydration habits, she realized she'd skipped water entirely after dinner the night before. She drank a glass, waited 20 minutes, and the symptoms eased. That simple action probably saved her from a worse episode. Emily began making hydration a central pillar of her workshops. She taught participants that thirst was a delayed signal, often too late to prevent the subtle damage dehydration caused. Instead, she encouraged proactive hydration, drinking water first thing in the morning, before coffee, before breakfast. She advised keeping a water bottle handy all day, sipping steadily rather than chugging in bursts. She explained how proper hydration helped keep blood vessels flexible and blood pressure balanced. "Think of your arteries like garden hoses," she said. "When they're well watered and supple, water flows easily. When they're dry and cracked, pressure builds up and risks increase. One day, Frank, the retired firefighter, came to her after a session with a new question: how much water is enough? I don't want to overdo it. Emily smiled. Great question. It depends on your body, activity, and climate, but a good rule of thumb is half your body weight in ounces daily. So if you weigh 160 pounds, aim for about 80 ounces. That's about 10 cups. She added, but don't force it all at once. Spread it out. She handed out simple hydration logs, asking people to track their intake for a week. Many were surprised at how little they actually drank. Linda admitted she rarely drank water before her morning coffee, thinking it was unnecessary. After the first week, she told Emily, I feel lighter, less foggy. It's like my body is waking up better. The ripple effect was clear. People reported better sleep, fewer headaches, less swelling in their ankles. Another participant, Carla, shared that her morning blood pressure had dropped significantly since she started hydrating earlier. Even Jack's therapists noted his improved circulation and reduced fatigue. Emily knew hydration alone wasn't a cure-all, but it was a foundation, a simple, low-cost, powerful tool. She started experimenting herself with different morning hydration routines. Sometimes lemon water, sometimes plain. Occasionally herbal teas with hydrating properties. She discovered that cold water right after waking sometimes shocked her system, making her feel jittery, so she preferred room temperature or warm liquids. She found that sipping slowly, with mindful breathing, made a difference in how hydrated she felt. She also researched how dehydration interacted with medications common in older adults. Many blood pressure drugs, diuretics, and pain medications increased dehydration risk. It was another layer to consider. During one workshop, a nurse named Rosa asked, "What about caffeine and hydration? Does coffee count?" Emily nodded thoughtfully. Caffeine is a mild diuretic, which means it can cause you to lose water. But in moderate amounts, it doesn't offset hydration if you're drinking enough overall. The key is balance. That's why it's important to drink water first thing in the morning, before your coffee, to give your body a base. She saw heads nod in understanding. Hydration also played a role in Emily's emotional well-being. She noticed that on days she was well hydrated, she felt calmer, less reactive. On dehydrated days, anxiety crept in more easily. The connection between the physical and emotional body was undeniable. She included this in her teachings, reminding people that health wasn't just numbers or habits, but a holistic experience. One afternoon, while writing her blog post titled, "Hydrate to Heal," Emily received a message from a woman named June, living in Vermont. June was 62 and had suffered a minor stroke last year. She wrote that Emily's advice had helped her establish a morning hydration routine that fit her busy schedule. She shared how the habit had reduced her headaches and improved her focus at work. Emily was touched. She replied, encouraging June to keep listening to her body and to prioritize hydration as a form of self-care. The story was powerful proof that simple changes could ripple into life-altering outcomes. But hydration was not without its challenges. Emily had learned that some people resisted drinking more water because of fear of frequent bathroom trips or incontinence issues common in older adults. She addressed these concerns openly, explaining practical solutions like timing hydration to avoid nighttime disruptions and discussing options with healthcare providers. She encouraged people not to let these challenges become barriers. Your body's needs come first, she said firmly. Emily also emphasized the importance of water quality. She cautioned against sugary drinks or heavily caffeinated beverages masquerading as hydration. She advised using filtered water when possible and flavored it naturally with slices of cucumber, mint, or citrus. The sensory experience made hydration more enjoyable and sustainable. As the months passed, Emily's community grew stronger. She hosted outdoor walks where participants carried water bottles and shared tips. She started a social media challenge called Hydrate First, encouraging people to post photos of their morning water rituals. The hashtag trended locally, sparking conversations and camaraderie. One evening, she was invited to speak on a local radio show about stroke prevention. The host asked her, "What's the biggest mistake people make with hydration after 60?" Without hesitation, Emily answered, "Waiting to feel thirsty. That's too late. Hydrate before thirst hits, especially in the morning. It's the difference between preparing your body for the day and reacting to a warning signal." She shared a surprising fact that made listeners sit up: mild dehydration could raise stroke risk by up to 50%. It was a wake-up call for many. After the interview, emails flooded in from listeners wanting advice, sharing their own struggles, and thanking her for the clarity. Emily realized that hydration wasn't just about water. It was a metaphor for how people approached their health, reactive instead of proactive, dismissive instead of attentive. Changing that mindset was as important as changing any habit. One afternoon, while reviewing comments on her blog, Emily stumbled upon a heartfelt post from a man named Robert. He wrote about losing his wife to a stroke 3 years earlier. He confessed he never understood how hydration or morning routines could have mattered so much. He thanked Emily for opening his eyes and promised to share the knowledge with his aging father. Emily felt a lump in her throat. These stories reminded her that every drop of effort mattered, that each habit change was a ripple across families and communities. She resolved to deepen her work. She began collaborating with nutritionists, physical therapists, and psychologists to develop a comprehensive morning wellness kit that included hydration guides, gentle stretches, and mindfulness exercises. Her vision was a toolkit that anyone over 60 could use to start their day with intention and protection against stroke. One crisp morning, Emily met with Dr. Patel again. They sat in the clinic's small conference room surrounded by posters of heart-healthy advice. "Emily," he said, "your work is making a difference. Patients are asking about hydration more than ever." He added thoughtfully, "I think you've tapped into something that medicine alone can't reach, the human connection to health." Emily nodded, humbled. "It's about respect. For the body, for the journey, for the lessons we learn as we age." They discussed plans to create a community pilot program focusing on hydration and early symptom recognition. Emily felt energized. She knew the path ahead would have challenges, but the foundation was strong. Later that day, she filled her favorite glass with filtered water and a slice of lemon. She held it up, watching the light catch the bubbles rising slowly to the surface. A quiet ritual. A simple act. A commitment to listen, to nourish, to protect. Because after 60, every drop counted. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Movement was more than just exercise. For Emily, it had become a lifeline, a daily ritual that reminded her she was still active, still fighting, still alive. After Jack's stroke, she had witnessed how immobility could steal away not only physical strength but also hope. She saw that movement, even small and gentle, was a powerful form of prevention and healing. But movement after 60 required a new approach. It wasn't about pushing harder or chasing records, it was about respect, consistency, and listening to the body's limits. Emily began to teach this philosophy in her workshops, emphasizing that the right kind of movement could lower stroke risk, improve circulation, and strengthen the heart without triggering injury or exhaustion. She often started sessions with a simple question: what does your body want to do today? The answers varied. Some days it was a slow walk, other days gentle stretches or even seated yoga. No judgment. No pressure. Just connection. One of the biggest misconceptions she fought against was the idea that older adults needed to push their bodies to extremes to gain benefits. She explained that overexertion, especially first thing in the morning, could spike blood pressure and raise stroke risk. Instead, the focus was on gradual, mindful movement that warmed the body and prepared it for the day. Emily remembered a turning point during her own recovery journey. A month after Jack's stroke, she tried to push herself too hard during a morning jog. Within minutes, her heart was racing, and dizziness crept in. She had to stop and sit down, feeling frustrated and defeated. That experience taught her a crucial lesson: movement was medicine, but it had to be prescribed carefully, by the body, not by the ego. She adapted her routine to include slow walking, balance exercises, and gentle yoga poses designed for flexibility and circulation. She found that this approach not only improved her physical health but also her mental clarity and emotional resilience. She shared these insights with her group. Frank, the former firefighter, was initially skeptical. "I'm used to pushing through," he said one morning. But after trying Emily's gentle movement routines, he admitted, "I feel stronger without the burnout. My legs don't ache like before." Carla, a retired teacher, found that daily walks improved her sleep and reduced her morning stiffness. Linda noticed her mood lifted on days she moved mindfully, even if just around the house. Emily incorporated specific exercises aimed at stroke prevention. These included neck stretches to ease tension that could affect blood flow, ankle rotations to improve circulation, and simple breathing exercises to calm the nervous system and lower blood pressure. She created videos and printed guides, encouraging people to move for 10 to 15 minutes every morning before breakfast. She emphasized the importance of consistency over intensity. "It's not about running a marathon," she told her group. "It's about honoring your body's needs every day." The science behind movement and stroke prevention fascinated her. Regular physical activity helped keep arteries flexible, reduced inflammation, and improved insulin sensitivity, all critical factors for cardiovascular health. Even moderate walking for 30 minutes a day could lower stroke risk by nearly 20%. Emily invited physical therapists and movement coaches to join her workshops. One guest speaker, Maya, specialized in balance and fall prevention. She explained that falls were a serious risk after 60, especially for stroke survivors, and that simple balance exercises could reduce this risk dramatically. Emily integrated these lessons, knowing that prevention had to be holistic. She encouraged participants to create their own morning movement rituals, adapting exercises to what felt right for their bodies. "It's your journey," she reminded them. "Find what moves you." One particularly inspiring story came from Robert, the man who had lost his wife to stroke. After joining Emily's program, he committed to walking daily with his father. The older man had been reluctant at first, struggling with arthritis and fatigue. But with Robert's encouragement and Emily's guidance, they started with short walks around the neighborhood, gradually increasing distance and pace. Robert shared that the time together improved not only their physical health but also their relationship. Movement became a bridge between generations, a shared commitment to life. Emily herself developed a morning routine she cherished, waking gently, drinking a glass of water, and then moving through a series of stretches and balance exercises by her window as the sun rose. She felt the cool air on her skin, heard the birds sing, and connected deeply to the moment. It was meditation in motion. She documented the routine in her journal, noting how it improved her mood and clarity for the day ahead. As she grew more confident, Emily added light resistance exercises using bands and weights. She knew strength training was essential for maintaining muscle mass and bone density, but she cautioned against heavy lifting without proper guidance. She encouraged people to consult professionals and listen closely to how their bodies responded. In one memorable workshop, she invited attendees to share their favorite movements. The variety was beautiful. Some loved dancing in their living rooms, others preferred gardening or Tai Chi. Emily celebrated all forms of movement, reinforcing that joy and sustainability mattered most. She recalled the story of Claudia, who had ignored early stroke symptoms but found healing through gentle swimming and stretching after her diagnosis. Movement became her medicine, a way to reclaim agency and hope. Emily often closed sessions with a reflection: movement is not punishment or obligation. It's a gift you give yourself every morning. It's proof that you are here, still fighting, still alive. What will you do with that gift today? Her message resonated deeply. As word spread, Emily was invited to speak at senior centers, community events, and even local gyms. Her talks focused on practical, accessible movement strategies tailored for people over 60, emphasizing safety, joy, and connection. She partnered with local health clinics to create group classes, fostering community and accountability. One afternoon, Emily received a call from a stroke survivor named Maria. Maria was 65 and had suffered a minor stroke 2 years prior. She told Emily that the movement routines had helped her regain confidence in walking and reduced her fear of falling. She credited Emily's program with giving her a new lease on life. Emily felt a surge of gratitude. These stories fueled her passion and deepened her commitment. She realized that movement was not just physical but spiritual, a way to honor the journey, to reclaim control, and to live fully despite challenges. As the seasons changed, Emily adapted her routines, incorporating indoor exercises during winter and outdoor activities in warmer months. She encouraged people to dress for the weather, to embrace nature, and to notice how movement connected them to the world around them. One morning, while walking in the park, Emily spotted Jack sitting on a bench with Linda. He was more alert, his posture straighter. She approached quietly, and Jack smiled. "Feeling better," he said softly. Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. "You're moving forward." The path ahead was still long, but movement had opened the door. In the quiet moments of that walk, Emily reflected on how far she and Jack had come. Stroke prevention was not about avoiding risk through fear, but about embracing life through action. Movement was a statement of resilience and hope. She vowed to keep sharing this message with every person she met. After all, after 60, every step mattered. Stress had always been a familiar companion to Emily, a shadow lurking behind the routines of daily life. But after turning 60, she realized that morning stress wasn't just an annoyance, it could be a silent trigger that drastically increased the risk of stroke. The more she learned, the more she understood how powerful the first moments after waking could be. The body's response to stress wasn't just emotional, it was physiological. The morning cortisol surge, the natural awakening hormone, could spike dangerously higher when anxiety or pressure flooded the mind. This sudden rise could cause blood vessels to constrict, blood pressure to climb, and the heart to race, all factors that heighten stroke risk. Emily's research revealed startling statistics. People over 60 who experienced chronic morning stress had nearly double the risk of stroke compared to those who began their day calmly. It was a wake-up call she couldn't ignore. She started to examine her own mornings closely. Did she rush? Did she allow worries to crowd her mind? Often, the answer was yes. Even on days she planned to be calm, old habits sneaked in, checking emails first thing, worrying about finances or family issues, reacting to news headlines. She noticed how her heart rate would jump, her breath would shorten, and tension would coil in her shoulders. It wasn't just in her imagination, she could feel the physical toll. Emily decided to change her approach. She began introducing stress reduction techniques in her workshops, focusing on the importance of creating peaceful, intentional morning rituals. She encouraged participants to start the day with stillness rather than screen time. One popular exercise was mindful breathing, simple yet profoundly effective. She taught people to breathe deeply and slowly for 5 minutes upon waking, to center themselves before engaging with the world. Linda, who often felt overwhelmed by her responsibilities, shared that this breathing practice helped her start the day grounded. Emily also introduced guided meditation and gentle stretches as ways to ease the body into the day. She explained that movement and mindfulness together could calm the nervous system, lowering cortisol and stabilizing blood pressure. Frank, ever the skeptic, admitted that meditation seemed new age, but after a few sessions, he noticed less tension in his neck and more patience with his family. The science behind stress and stroke was clear. Chronic stress caused inflammation and damaged blood vessels, increasing the chance of clots forming. Morning stress was especially harmful because the body's cardiovascular system was already primed to awaken. Adding psychological stress on top of that created a dangerous overload. Emily emphasized that managing morning stress was not about eliminating challenges but about controlling reactions. She encouraged journaling as a tool to externalize worries, making them manageable rather than overwhelming. She recommended setting intentions instead of diving into to-do lists or news feeds. She suggested calming music or nature sounds as a backdrop for the morning routine. She even taught the practice of gratitude, starting the day by naming 3 things to be thankful for, which rewired the brain toward positivity. Emily's own mornings transformed. She swapped scrolling on her phone for 15 minutes of silence, focusing on breath and body sensations. She poured herself a cup of herbal tea and sat by the window, watching sunlight dance on leaves. She noticed that starting this way made stressful news or family conflicts easier to face later. One day, during a workshop, a woman named Marcy shared a powerful story. Marcy was 64 and had recently survived a minor stroke. She recounted how her hectic mornings, filled with rushing and worry, had contributed to her health crisis. Since adopting Emily's mindful practices, she felt calmer and more in control. She even slept better. Her story resonated deeply with the group. Emily realized that beyond physical habits, the emotional atmosphere of the morning shaped health profoundly. She encouraged participants to protect their mornings like a sacred space, free from chaos and demands. She cautioned against checking phones immediately upon waking, explaining that the barrage of notifications triggered stress hormones. Instead, she suggested creating a morning buffer, time dedicated solely to self-care before engaging with the outside world. This advice sparked lively discussions. Some shared struggles with work demands or caregiving that made stress unavoidable. Emily acknowledged these realities but emphasized small pockets of calm could still be found. She reminded them that even 1 minute of deep breath or quiet reflection was better than none. She introduced progressive muscle relaxation techniques that could be done in bed, easing physical tension without requiring extra time. In collaboration with a local psychologist, Emily developed a short audio program guiding listeners through morning mindfulness and stress reduction. The program received enthusiastic feedback, with users reporting lower anxiety and improved mood. Emily was thrilled to see practical tools making a real difference. She also explored the role of sleep in morning stress. Poor sleep quality or sleep apnea, common in older adults, increased cortisol levels and disrupted natural rhythms, making mornings harder to manage. She encouraged participants to discuss sleep issues with their doctors and adopt sleep hygiene practices such as regular bedtimes and reducing screen time before bed. Emily herself became more vigilant about her own sleep, recognizing how it influenced her stress and stroke risk. One evening, Emily sat down with Jack to discuss these insights. Jack admitted that mornings were often the hardest part of his day, filled with frustration over limitations and worries about his health. Emily suggested they create a shared morning ritual, breathing exercises and gentle stretches before breakfast. Over time, Jack noticed his irritability lessened and his energy improved. Their shared routine became a moment of connection and healing. Emily documented these experiences in her blog, inviting readers to reflect on their own morning stress patterns. She asked provocative questions. What thoughts greet you first thing? How do you react? What would happen if you met your morning with kindness instead of urgency? The responses were powerful. Many admitted they had never considered the impact of morning stress on their health. Some vowed to try Emily's suggestions, hopeful for change. As Emily's work gained recognition, she was invited to present at a regional health conference. Her talk, titled Calm Mornings, Strong Hearts, Managing Morning Stress to Prevent Stroke, drew a large audience. She shared research findings, practical tips, and personal stories that moved listeners. The Q&A session revealed a hunger for guidance on managing stress realistically in busy lives. Emily left the stage energized and committed to expanding her outreach. Back home, she reflected on the larger implications. Stress was universal but often invisible in its health effects. Morning stress was a subtle saboteur, quietly increasing risk while masquerading as normal. Her mission was to shine a light on this hidden danger and offer tools for prevention. One quiet morning, Emily awoke earlier than usual and felt a familiar surge of anxiety about an upcoming family issue. Instead of reacting, she paused, took deep breaths, and reminded herself of the tools she taught. She visualized calm spreading through her body, slowing her heart rate, softening tension. The storm passed, replaced by peace. That moment crystallized her journey, the power of mindful presence to rewrite the body's response to stress. She knew this was the message that could save lives. Emily ended the chapter of her own life story not with fear, but with hope, that every morning held a choice. To rush into chaos or to greet the day with calm. To let stress build or to breathe through it. To surrender to fear or to claim resilience. For those over 60, these choices were more than habits, they were lifelines. Because stroke risk was real, but so was the power to change the morning story. Everyone knows Elon Musk as a visionary, a man who pushes the boundaries of technology and innovation. But few realize that behind his relentless drive is a carefully crafted morning routine that protects his health, especially his brain. Emily discovered this when researching the habits of high achievers who managed stress and stroke risk after 60. The morning mistake Elon Musk won't make isn't about rushing or skipping breakfast, it's about how he approaches caffeine, hydration, and movement in the crucial first hours of the day. Many people over 60 make a common but dangerous mistake: they consume high doses of caffeine immediately upon waking, often on an empty stomach. This sudden jolt, Emily learned, can cause a spike in blood pressure that triples stroke risk. Scientific studies confirm this. Caffeine triggers adrenaline release, which constricts blood vessels and elevates heart rate. When combined with dehydration, common after a night's sleep, this cocktail becomes a recipe for cardiovascular disaster. Elon Musk reportedly delays his first coffee by at least an hour after waking, using that time to hydrate and engage in gentle movement. Emily's research revealed that proper hydration in the morning helps thin the blood and improve circulation, reducing strain on the heart and arteries. She realized how crucial this habit was for her audience. Too many people reached for coffee out of habit, unaware of the hidden dangers. Emily began sharing this insight widely. She encouraged participants to drink a glass of water immediately after waking to replenish fluids lost overnight. She explained that water jump-started metabolism, lowered blood viscosity, and prepared the body for caffeine later in the morning if desired. The timing mattered. Delaying caffeine consumption allowed blood pressure to stabilize and the nervous system to adjust naturally. Emily developed a simple formula for morning hydration: 1 glass of water upon waking, followed by light movement, then coffee or tea if preferred. She emphasized that this sequence lowered stroke risk by maintaining balanced blood pressure. Participants quickly embraced the routine. Frank said, "I never thought about coffee this way. I always drank it first thing. Now I wait, and I feel less jittery." Linda reported that waiting to drink coffee helped reduce her morning headaches. Emily also addressed the habit of drinking coffee on an empty stomach, which could irritate the digestive tract and cause stress hormone spikes. She recommended having a light snack or breakfast before caffeine to buffer its effects. Nutritionist guests in her workshops confirmed that a balanced breakfast with protein and healthy fats further stabilized blood sugar and blood pressure. Emily's message spread beyond her local group. She posted videos demonstrating the Elon Musk morning sequence: water, movement, light breakfast, then caffeine. She included alternatives like herbal teas for those sensitive to caffeine. The response was enthusiastic. People appreciated practical, science-backed advice. Some even joked about morning Musk mode, inspired to adopt healthier habits. Emily's own mornings transformed. She started each day with a tall glass of water, followed by stretches and breathing exercises. Only after this ritual did she enjoy her coffee, savoring it slowly rather than gulping it down. She noticed improvements in her energy, mood, and focus. One morning, Emily hosted a live Q&A online about caffeine and stroke risk. A viewer named George shared that he'd suffered a mild stroke after years of heavy morning coffee. He said he wished he'd known earlier about the dangers of caffeine timing. Emily encouraged him, explaining that lifestyle changes could still make a big difference in recovery and prevention. The conversation deepened her resolve to spread this message widely. She partnered with local cafes and health clinics to promote stroke-safe mornings, encouraging people to rethink their caffeine habits. Cafes offered decaf or delayed coffee options, and clinics distributed educational materials. Emily's initiative gained media attention, highlighting the link between caffeine, hydration, and stroke risk in older adults. Meanwhile, Emily continued to explore how other high-profile figures approached mornings. She found that many successful people prioritized hydration, movement, and mindful pauses before caffeine or work. She noted that these habits weren't about perfection but about respect for the body's natural rhythms. This contrasted sharply with the common culture of instant gratification and rushing. Emily recalled the early days of her own health struggles, when mornings were frantic and chaotic. The lesson she learned was that slowing down didn't mean giving up ambition, it meant fueling it sustainably. The story of Elon Musk's morning routine became a symbol for her audience, a reminder that even the busiest, most driven people could, and should, care for their health thoughtfully. She encouraged participants to create their own morning Musk rituals, adapted to personal preferences but grounded in hydration, movement, and mindful caffeine consumption. Emily also highlighted how the morning mistake could intersect with other stroke risk factors like high blood pressure, dehydration, and stress. She stressed that prevention required a holistic approach, combining healthy habits across multiple areas. One afternoon, Emily met with Dr. Harris, a neurologist specializing in stroke. They discussed emerging research on caffeine and stroke risk. Dr. Harris confirmed that the timing and amount of caffeine intake were critical factors, especially for people over 60 with underlying cardiovascular issues. He praised Emily's educational efforts and emphasized the need for public awareness. Together, they planned a community seminar to reach a broader audience. At the seminar, Emily presented the morning mistake concept alongside practical strategies for stroke prevention. She shared real-life testimonials, scientific data, and easy-to-follow tips. The attendees left energized and informed, many promising to change their morning routines. Back home, Emily reflected on the power of small changes. One habit, waiting to drink coffee, could literally save lives. She understood that habits were deeply ingrained, often tied to comfort and routine. Changing them required patience, support, and clear reasons. Her story was proof that knowledge combined with community made transformation possible. She continued to write articles and create videos, aiming to reach as many people as possible. The feedback she received fueled her passion. Emily knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Changing morning habits meant confronting decades of behavior and cultural norms. But the potential benefits were enormous: reduced stroke risk, improved heart health, better quality of life. She envisioned a future where every person over 60 could start the day in a way that honored their health and dignity. One morning, while sipping her coffee after water and stretches, Emily smiled. She had come a long way from the chaotic, stressful mornings of the past. Her journey was a testament to resilience and learning. She felt empowered to share this knowledge and help others avoid the morning mistake that even the most brilliant minds would never make. In the quiet calm of that morning, Emily understood the truth: prevention was not about fear, but about wise choices. Small shifts in routine could change the course of a life. She was ready to keep moving forward, one mindful morning at a time. Breakfast has long been called the most important meal of the day, but for people over 60, skipping breakfast can be more than just a bad habit, it can be a silent killer. Emily had always enjoyed breakfast but never fully realized its vital role in stroke prevention until she dug deeper into the science and stories of those affected. After 60, the body's metabolism slows, blood sugar regulation becomes more fragile, and blood vessels lose some of their elasticity. These changes mean that skipping breakfast can lead to dangerous spikes in blood sugar and blood pressure, increasing the risk of clot formation and stroke. Emily found alarming studies that showed older adults who regularly skipped breakfast had up to a 20% higher risk of stroke compared to those who ate a balanced morning meal. This was not just correlation but a warning sign that breakfast mattered more than ever with age. The problem, Emily discovered, was that many people skipped breakfast due to loss of appetite, busy schedules, or misinformation about dieting and weight control. Some thought skipping meals was healthy or a way to control blood sugar, but in reality, it backfired. When the body wakes after hours of fasting, it needs nourishment to stabilize energy and maintain healthy circulation. Without breakfast, cortisol levels surged, causing blood pressure to rise and blood thickening to worsen, dangerous conditions for stroke. Emily decided to focus on educating her community about the importance of a nutritious breakfast tailored to older adults. She emphasized that quality mattered more than quantity. A small, balanced meal with protein, healthy fats, and fiber could provide sustained energy and support cardiovascular health. She recommended foods like eggs, oatmeal, nuts, berries, and avocado, ingredients rich in nutrients and easy to digest. Emily also highlighted the role of hydration with breakfast, encouraging water or herbal teas to support circulation. She explained that sugary cereals or processed breakfast items could worsen blood sugar swings and inflammation, so they should be avoided. Linda, one of her workshop participants, admitted that she often skipped breakfast because she didn't feel hungry in the morning. After learning Emily's advice, she tried eating a small bowl of oatmeal with nuts and fruit and noticed more stable energy throughout the day and less dizziness. Frank, who had battled high blood pressure, shared that introducing a protein-rich breakfast helped him control his numbers better and avoid morning headaches. Emily also addressed the myth that skipping breakfast was a good way to lose weight. She explained that for older adults, metabolism was different, and skipping meals often led to overeating later, causing blood sugar spikes and weight gain. She encouraged mindful eating and regular meals to support a healthy metabolism. One key point Emily stressed was that breakfast routines created opportunities for connection and reflection. She suggested sharing meals with family or friends to nurture relationships and create emotional well-being, which in turn reduced stress and stroke risk. Emily herself started experimenting with new breakfast recipes. She discovered that even simple changes, like adding flaxseed or chia seeds to yogurt or blending greens into a smoothie, could boost nutrition. She felt more energized and focused, confirming that breakfast was a cornerstone of her morning health strategy. During one workshop, a new participant named Robert shared his story. At 65, Robert had suffered a minor stroke and was determined to make changes. He confessed he often skipped breakfast due to early morning nausea and discomfort. Emily worked with him to find suitable foods, gentle on the stomach but nutrient-dense. Robert found that eating a small banana with peanut butter helped settle his stomach and gave him energy. His doctors noted improvements in his blood pressure and cholesterol after just a few weeks. Emily realized that breakfast was not one-size-fits-all. Personalizing meals to fit individual needs and preferences was key to sustainability. She encouraged experimentation and listening to the body. The message was clear: no one should skip breakfast after 60, but everyone could find a version that worked for them. Emily also explored cultural breakfast habits from around the world, finding inspiration in Mediterranean and Japanese traditions known for their heart-healthy qualities. She integrated these ideas into her teaching, offering diverse, delicious options. She found that sharing recipes and food stories created enthusiasm and community support among participants. One surprising discovery was the role of intermittent fasting in stroke prevention. While popular in younger adults, Emily found that extended fasting periods in older adults could increase morning blood pressure and stroke risk if not done carefully. She advised caution and consultation with healthcare providers before trying such diets after 60. Emily's comprehensive approach addressed both the physical and emotional importance of breakfast. She encouraged participants to view breakfast not just as fuel but as a moment of self-care and empowerment. This shift in mindset helped people commit to healthier routines. Emily's blog featured interviews with dietitians, neurologists, and stroke survivors, reinforcing the critical role of breakfast. She shared inspiring stories of transformation, people who reclaimed their mornings and their health through simple, consistent meals. The feedback was overwhelming. Readers thanked her for clarifying why breakfast mattered and providing practical tips to overcome barriers. Emily knew that changing lifelong habits was challenging but also believed that small, steady steps could lead to profound results. One morning, Emily sat with Jack over breakfast, reflecting on their journey. Jack confessed that eating breakfast regularly helped him feel more balanced and less anxious about his health. They planned to experiment with new recipes together and make breakfast a daily ritual of gratitude and connection. Emily ended the chapter with a powerful reminder: skipping breakfast after 60 wasn't just missing a meal, it was risking health and life. She challenged her readers and listeners to honor their bodies with nourishment each morning, knowing that this simple act could protect their brains and hearts. The truth was clear and urgent: breakfast was more than tradition, it was a vital shield against stroke. In the bright light of that morning, Emily felt hope. She knew that with awareness, education, and support, older adults could change their futures, one breakfast at a time. Cold showers might sound like an invigorating way to start the day, but for people over 60, they could be a hidden danger, silently raising the risk of stroke. Emily had always been curious about the trend of cold exposure for health benefits popularized in wellness circles and by athletes. However, as she dug deeper into the science and spoke with medical experts, she discovered a starkly different reality for older adults. The shock of cold water on the body triggers an immediate and powerful response in the nervous system. Blood vessels constrict to preserve heat, blood pressure spikes, and the heart rate accelerates. While these effects might be manageable or even beneficial for younger, healthy individuals, in older adults with less resilient cardiovascular systems, this sudden surge can push the body toward dangerous thresholds. Emily found research showing that abrupt cold exposure in people over 60 was linked to a significant increase in the likelihood of ischemic stroke, the type caused by blocked blood vessels. The mechanism was clear: the cold-induced constriction made blood flow more turbulent and prone to clot formation. This could result in vessels in the brain becoming blocked, triggering a stroke. Emily also learned that cold showers elevated stress hormones like norepinephrine and cortisol. In people already vulnerable to hypertension or atherosclerosis, this hormonal spike exacerbated risk. She spoke to Dr. Harris, her neurologist friend, who confirmed that for many older patients, cold showers were a risky gamble. Instead, he advised gentler temperature transitions in the morning routine. Emily realized that the popular cold shower challenge was not a one-size-fits-all solution. She began incorporating this caution into her workshops and materials. She urged participants over 60 to avoid sudden cold exposure and instead suggested warming showers or gradual temperature adjustments. Linda, who enjoyed brisk showers, admitted she sometimes took cold water for granted as a wake-up tool. After learning about the risks, she switched to comfortably warm water and noticed a decrease in her morning dizziness and headaches. Frank shared that he had experienced palpitations after cold showers, which worried him. He welcomed Emily's advice to moderate his routine. Emily also explored alternatives that provided morning invigoration without stroke risk. She recommended light exercise, stretching, and breathing techniques to stimulate circulation safely. Gentle sunlight exposure through a window was another way to awaken the body naturally. Emily herself stopped her habit of jumping into cold showers after waking. Instead, she allowed herself a warm shower followed by a few minutes of mindful breathing and stretching. She noticed her blood pressure was more stable and her mood more even. Emily emphasized that these changes were not about avoiding challenge but about respecting the body's limits and promoting longevity. In her blog, Emily addressed the cultural fascination with cold exposure. She acknowledged the benefits touted for younger people: improved immunity, mood, and metabolism, but stressed that age and health status must guide personal choices. She encouraged readers to listen to their bodies and seek medical advice before adopting extreme practices. To reach a broader audience, Emily partnered with a local wellness center to host a seminar titled Safe Morning Routines for Stroke Prevention. She presented the cold shower findings alongside hydration, stress management, and nutrition advice. Attendees appreciated the balanced view, acknowledging trends without ignoring risks. The seminar sparked important conversations about tailoring health practices to age and condition. Emily also incorporated the cold shower topic into interviews with stroke survivors. One woman, Joan, recounted how she had suffered a stroke after a cold snap when she took a cold shower out of habit. Joan's story was a powerful cautionary tale that resonated deeply with the community. Emily reminded everyone that stroke prevention was about combining awareness, respect for the body, and evidence-based habits. She urged people not to follow trends blindly but to adapt with wisdom. Emily's message was clear: invigorate your mornings, but safely. She encouraged people over 60 to prioritize routines that supported circulation without triggering dangerous spikes. Her advice was echoed by many medical professionals, who praised her practical, compassionate approach. One day, Emily received a message from a reader named Henry, who had struggled with blood pressure for years. He thanked her for saving him from what could have been a life-threatening mistake. He said he had almost started a cold shower routine before reading her blog and now felt empowered to make safer choices. Emily felt gratitude for the real impact of her work. She continued to develop content around safe morning habits, knowing that prevention was the best medicine. She reminded herself and others that health was a journey, not a race, and that honoring the body's signals was essential. In quiet moments, Emily reflected on the broader theme of balance, between challenge and care, innovation and tradition, risk and prudence. The cold shower chapter of her story was a reminder that wisdom often lay in knowing when to slow down and adapt. For those over 60, this balance could mean the difference between thriving and tragedy. Emily ended the chapter with a hopeful message: mornings could be powerful beginnings, full of light and life, if approached with knowledge and kindness. Cold showers might invigorate youth, but warm, mindful rituals nourished longevity. She invited readers to choose their path wisely, protecting their hearts and brains one careful step at a time. For millions of Americans over 60, morning medications are a routine part of life, essential pills taken to control blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, and more. But what Emily uncovered was a hidden danger lurking in the way many people take their medications after waking. Timing, hydration, and interaction with morning habits could significantly affect how these drugs worked, and, in some cases, increase stroke risk. Emily's investigation began when a workshop participant named Martha shared a troubling experience. Martha, 68, faithfully took her blood pressure medication immediately after waking but still suffered episodes of dizziness and uncontrolled spikes. Curious, Emily delved into research and consulted with pharmacists and doctors. She discovered that some medications required specific timing relative to food and water intake to be effective and safe. Taking pills on an empty stomach without enough water could cause erratic absorption and blood pressure fluctuations. Moreover, certain medications interacted poorly with caffeine or even cold water, amplifying side effects or reducing benefits. This meant that the very routines people followed might inadvertently undermine their stroke prevention efforts. Emily learned that morning dehydration was a critical factor. Overnight, the body loses water through breathing and sweat, concentrating the blood and thickening it. Taking medications without rehydrating first could cause increased strain on the kidneys and heart. Experts recommended drinking a full glass of water before swallowing pills to support circulation and drug metabolism. Timing also mattered. Some blood pressure medications worked best when taken at night, while others required consistency in the morning but with food. Emily emphasized the importance of following doctors' instructions closely and consulting healthcare providers about optimal schedules. She encouraged participants to keep a medication journal and discuss side effects or unusual symptoms with their doctors. Another surprising discovery was that caffeine could interact with certain medications. For example, stimulants in coffee might reduce the effectiveness of beta blockers or increase heart rate, counteracting the benefits. Emily suggested waiting at least 30 to 60 minutes after taking medications before drinking coffee or switching to decaf. She also warned against taking medications with acidic juices like grapefruit, which could dangerously affect drug levels. In her workshops, Emily created practical routines for morning medications. First, hydrate with a full glass of water. Second, take medications as prescribed. Third, wait before consuming caffeine or breakfast if advised. This sequence supported better absorption and minimized side effects. Martha, after adjusting her routine under Emily's guidance, reported improved blood pressure control and fewer dizzy spells. Emily's advice was supported by a growing body of research showing that medication timing and hydration could influence outcomes in stroke prevention. Pharmacists she interviewed praised her approach, noting that many patients lacked clear information about these nuances. Emily also addressed the emotional side of medication management. She understood that for many older adults, taking pills was a daily reminder of health challenges and mortality. She encouraged mindfulness and self-compassion, framing medication routines as acts of self-care rather than burdens. One poignant moment came when Robert, a stroke survivor, shared how managing his medications with Emily's help gave him a new sense of control and hope. Emily's blog posts on medication timing gained traction. Readers shared stories of improved energy and fewer side effects after tweaking their morning routines. Healthcare professionals reached out to thank her for raising awareness on this often overlooked topic. To expand her impact, Emily collaborated with local pharmacies to create informational pamphlets on safe morning medication habits. These materials included hydration tips, food and drug interaction warnings, and reminders to consult doctors regularly. At a community health fair, Emily presented "The Morning Medication Mistake," drawing a large crowd eager to learn. The event sparked lively discussions and personal questions, empowering attendees to advocate for their health. Emily emphasized that stroke prevention wasn't just about medication adherence but about optimizing the entire morning routine, from hydration to movement to mindful intake. She reminded everyone that small adjustments could have big effects on brain health. Emily's own mornings now included a dedicated medication ritual. She started by drinking water immediately upon waking, taking her supplements with care, then waiting before coffee and breakfast. She journaled symptoms and adjusted with medical advice, feeling more in tune with her body. Reflecting on the journey, Emily realized that the hidden danger of morning medications wasn't just about drugs themselves but about awareness and education. Many older adults struggled silently with side effects or poor control because they lacked clear guidance on how to integrate medications into their routines. Emily's mission became to bridge that gap. In quiet moments, she thought about the millions silently affected. She hoped that by sharing these insights, she could help prevent needless strokes and suffering. The morning was a powerful time, full of potential for healing or harm. Knowledge was the key to tipping the balance toward health. Emily closed the chapter with a heartfelt call to action: consult your healthcare providers, hydrate well, follow medication instructions carefully, and create a morning routine that supports your brain and body. The stakes were high, but with mindful choices, the risk of stroke could be lowered. Emily believed that every pill taken with care was a step toward a longer, fuller life. She invited readers to join her in transforming mornings from a time of risk to a time of hope and healing. Mornings often set the tone for the entire day, but for those over 60, starting the day with stress and anxiety can silently increase the risk of stroke. Emily had seen this firsthand in her workshops. Participants who began their mornings feeling rushed, overwhelmed, or worried tended to have higher blood pressure readings and more frequent heart palpitations. She knew that stress wasn't just an emotional state but a powerful biological force that could impact brain health, especially in older adults. The physiology behind stress and stroke was complex yet clear. When the body experiences stress or anxiety, it triggers the release of hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones prepare the body for fight or flight by increasing heart rate, constricting blood vessels, and raising blood pressure. In younger people, the system resets quickly, but in older adults, the effects often linger, contributing to chronic hypertension, inflammation, and damage to blood vessels, key risk factors for stroke. Emily studied research confirming that morning stress could cause temporary spikes in blood pressure, which in turn could trigger ischemic or hemorrhagic strokes. These spikes were especially dangerous when combined with other risk factors common after 60, like atherosclerosis or atrial fibrillation. Emily also noticed that stressful mornings often led to unhealthy coping habits, skipping breakfast, smoking, or consuming excessive caffeine, all of which compounded stroke risk. She knew that managing morning stress was essential but often overlooked in stroke prevention strategies. Emily began exploring practical techniques to help older adults create calm, intentional mornings. She introduced breathing exercises designed to reduce sympathetic nervous system activation and lower blood pressure. Simple practices like deep, slow inhales followed by gentle exhales helped participants feel more centered before starting their day. Mindfulness meditation was another tool Emily taught. Spending even 5 minutes focusing on the present moment without judgment could lower cortisol levels and improve emotional resilience. Participants shared that these exercises reduced feelings of panic or overwhelm and made it easier to handle daily challenges. Emily also emphasized the power of planning. Preparing the night before, laying out clothes, organizing medications, and setting priorities, could alleviate morning chaos and reduce anxiety. She encouraged participants to create morning rituals that promoted calm, such as sipping tea quietly or journaling positive intentions. In her own life, Emily started waking 10 minutes earlier to avoid rushing. She used that time for gentle stretches and deep breathing, which helped her maintain steady blood pressure and a more positive mood throughout the day. She noticed her focus sharpened and her stress lessened. One participant, Robert, who had survived a minor stroke, shared that before learning these techniques, his mornings were filled with worry and impatience. After practicing breathing and planning, he reported fewer blood pressure spikes and felt more in control of his emotions. This transformation was powerful proof that managing morning stress could be life-changing. Emily also discussed the role of social support. Connecting with loved ones or friends in the morning, even briefly, could reduce feelings of isolation and provide emotional grounding. She suggested phone calls, shared breakfasts, or simple check-ins as ways to foster connection. In interviews with neurologists and psychologists, Emily gathered expert perspectives on stress and stroke. They emphasized that while stress was unavoidable, how people responded mattered most. Developing coping skills and cultivating calm were protective factors. Emily's blog readers shared stories of how incorporating stress management into their mornings improved not only their blood pressure but also their overall well-being. Some noted better sleep and mood stability as well. Emily cautioned against the dangers of ignoring or suppressing stress. Chronic unaddressed anxiety could lead to long-term damage to blood vessels and brain tissue, increasing stroke risk. She urged readers to seek professional help if feelings of anxiety or depression were overwhelming. To reach more people, Emily partnered with local senior centers to offer workshops on stress reduction. She included guided breathing sessions, mindfulness practice, and group discussions about overcoming morning fears and worries. Attendees reported feeling more hopeful and equipped to face their days with calm. Emily concluded that managing morning stress after 60 was a crucial but often neglected aspect of stroke prevention. By shifting the morning from a battleground of anxiety to a sanctuary of calm, older adults could protect their brains and hearts. The tools were simple yet powerful, requiring only intention and practice. She left readers with a challenge: before diving into the day, pause and breathe. Cultivate moments of stillness. Nurture your mental health with the same care you give your body. In doing so, you build a fortress against the invisible but deadly risks that stress can bring. Emily believed that every calm morning was a victory, a step toward a longer, healthier life filled with peace and purpose. The journey was not always easy, but with awareness and support, it was possible. Stroke was a formidable opponent, but the power to prevent it began each morning, with the breath and the choice to find calm. Skipping breakfast is a habit many people adopt for convenience or weight control, but after age 60, it can become a silent threat that dramatically increases the risk of stroke. Emily had observed this pattern repeatedly in her stroke prevention workshops. Older adults who routinely skipped breakfast often experienced blood sugar fluctuations, fatigue, and higher blood pressure, all factors that contributed to stroke risk. Emily's curiosity about the role of breakfast in stroke prevention led her to explore the science and stories behind this overlooked morning meal. She found that breakfast kickstarts the body's metabolism after an overnight fast, providing essential nutrients and energy for the brain and heart. When breakfast is skipped, the body enters a prolonged fasting state, which can cause blood sugar levels to dip dangerously low and then rebound sharply after the next meal. These fluctuations strain the cardiovascular system and can trigger harmful hormonal responses. Research showed that skipping breakfast was associated with increased inflammation and thicker blood, both of which heighten the likelihood of blood clots forming in arteries. For people over 60, whose blood vessels might already be compromised by age-related changes, this could be the tipping point toward stroke. Emily spoke with dietitians who emphasized the importance of balanced morning nutrition. They explained that breakfast should include fiber, healthy fats, protein, and complex carbohydrates to provide steady energy and stabilize blood sugar. High sugar or processed breakfasts could do more harm than good by causing rapid spikes. Emily also encountered stories from stroke survivors who had ignored morning hunger signals for years. One woman, Carol, admitted she thought skipping breakfast helped her lose weight but later learned it contributed to her stroke risk. After changing her habits, Carol felt more energized and stable throughout the day. Emily incorporated this knowledge into her workshops, advising participants to treat breakfast as a vital medicine rather than a chore. She suggested simple, nutrient-rich options such as oatmeal with nuts, yogurt with fruit, or whole-grain toast with avocado. Emily herself committed to never skip breakfast again. She found that a well-balanced meal helped her mental clarity, mood, and blood pressure. She noticed a profound difference in how her mornings unfolded: less fatigue, more focus, and a steady pulse. To combat common barriers like lack of appetite or morning nausea, Emily recommended small, frequent meals or smoothies packed with nutrients. She encouraged listening to the body's needs rather than forcing large meals. Emily also addressed common myths, such as the idea that skipping breakfast automatically aids weight loss. She explained that for older adults, stable blood sugar and consistent energy were far more important than occasional calorie restriction, especially to prevent stroke. Her blog posts on breakfast and stroke gained traction. Readers shared successes and challenges, and many expressed surprise at how skipping a simple meal could have such profound effects. Emily reached out to healthcare providers to encourage discussion about breakfast habits during routine checkups, aiming to integrate nutrition into stroke prevention plans more fully. In collaboration with a local senior center, Emily hosted a healthy breakfast workshop, where participants learned how to prepare easy, tasty meals that supported brain and heart health. The event was a hit, with attendees eager to share recipes and tips. Emily emphasized the theme of self-care, nourishing the body as a way to protect it from stroke and other age-related illnesses. In reflecting on the broader lessons of her work, Emily recognized that breakfast was more than food, it was a ritual that set the stage for the day's health. She urged readers to honor their bodies by starting each morning with care and attention. Emily closed the chapter with a hopeful message: breakfast is your brain's fuel and your heart's ally. Don't let a missed meal become a missed chance to protect your future. Nourish yourself with kindness and wisdom, your body will thank you. For those over 60, embracing a consistent, healthy breakfast was a simple yet powerful step toward reducing stroke risk and enhancing quality of life. Emily believed that small changes, sustained over time, could create profound impacts. She invited readers to join her in reclaiming the morning meal, not just as a habit, but as a vital act of love and prevention. Morning dehydration is an invisible risk many people over 60 overlook, but it can quietly set the stage for stroke. Emily had encountered this dangerous habit early in her research and was determined to spread awareness about why rehydrating upon waking was essential for brain and heart health. Overnight, the body loses water through breathing, sweating, and metabolic processes. By the time most people get out of bed, their bodies are in a mildly dehydrated state. For younger adults, this might cause little more than slight fatigue or dry mouth, but for older adults, dehydration can have serious consequences. Emily learned from medical experts that dehydration thickens the blood, making it more viscous and prone to clotting. This increased viscosity means the heart must work harder to pump blood, and sluggish circulation can contribute to the formation of dangerous clots in arteries supplying the brain. These clots can block blood flow and trigger ischemic strokes. Additionally, dehydration can cause blood pressure to rise erratically, another critical risk factor for stroke. As the arteries constrict to maintain pressure, the risk of vessel damage and rupture grows. Emily found studies linking chronic dehydration to increased incidence of stroke in older populations. She also discovered that dehydration impaired kidney function, which in turn affected blood pressure regulation and increased stroke vulnerability. Emily's workshops began to emphasize the simple yet powerful habit of drinking water immediately upon waking. She recommended at least 1 full glass of water before any coffee, tea, or medication. This first step in the morning helped restore blood volume and supported healthy circulation. Emily shared personal stories of participants who had ignored morning thirst or delayed hydration until later. One man, George, described frequent morning dizziness and headaches that resolved after he started drinking water first thing. Another participant, Linda, admitted she felt sluggish every morning until she made hydration a priority. Emily also addressed common barriers. Some people disliked plain water or felt it was unnecessary. She encouraged infusing water with lemon or cucumber for flavor or keeping a glass by the bedside as a reminder. She explained that even mild dehydration could impact brain function and mood, making hydration a cornerstone of cognitive health. Emily partnered with nutritionists who reinforced that hydration was a crucial part of a balanced diet, especially for older adults who often have a diminished sense of thirst. She urged caregivers and families to remind loved ones about hydration needs. Emily's blog posts on morning dehydration gained wide attention. Readers shared how a simple glass of water transformed their energy and well-being. Healthcare providers thanked her for raising the profile of hydration in stroke prevention. To reach more people, Emily worked with senior centers to distribute water bottles and educational materials about hydration's role in brain health. In seminars, she demonstrated easy hydration routines and the science behind blood viscosity and stroke risk. Emily reflected on how something so basic could have such profound implications. The first sip of water each morning was a small act with big power, hydrating not just the body but protecting the brain from stroke's devastation. She cautioned that hydration wasn't a cure-all but a vital piece of a holistic prevention puzzle, including nutrition, stress management, medication adherence, and safe physical activity. Emily's own mornings now began with a ritual glass of water, which she described as a moment of connection to her body and health. She encouraged readers to make hydration a mindful habit, a daily investment in their future. She closed the chapter with a clear message: don't let dehydration steal your mornings or your health. A simple glass of water is your brain's best friend after 60. Drink deeply, live fully, and protect your precious life. For older adults, understanding and embracing hydration was a critical step toward reducing stroke risk and enhancing quality of life. Emily believed that prevention started with awareness, and she invited readers to join her in making hydration a non-negotiable part of every morning. The path to stroke prevention was paved with simple choices, and drinking water first thing was one of the easiest and most effective. Many people over 60 have made a habit of checking their blood pressure immediately after waking, believing it helps them stay on top of their health. Emily discovered, however, that this seemingly harmless routine could sometimes be a hidden risk factor for stroke if done incorrectly or without context. Blood pressure naturally fluctuates throughout the day, influenced by body position, activity level, stress, and hydration. When people measure it right after waking, their readings can be misleadingly high due to overnight hormonal changes and the body's natural transition from sleep to alertness. Emily learned from cardiologists that these morning surges in blood pressure, known as the morning blood pressure surge, are normal but can be exaggerated in some older adults with hypertension or arterial stiffness. Checking blood pressure at this vulnerable time without proper preparation might cause unnecessary anxiety or lead to medication changes based on inaccurate readings. More importantly, Emily found that frequent, unmonitored blood pressure checks could cause stress and obsession, which ironically raised blood pressure further and increased stroke risk. She recalled a participant named Helen who admitted to checking her blood pressure multiple times within the first hour of waking, leading to panic attacks and poor sleep. Emily understood the psychology behind this behavior. Fear of stroke or heart attack can drive compulsive monitoring, which becomes counterproductive. Emily emphasized that blood pressure measurements are most accurate when taken after resting quietly for at least 5 minutes, in a seated position, and with proper cuff placement. She advised waiting at least 30 minutes after waking, hydrating, and avoiding caffeine or exercise before measuring. This routine ensured readings reflected the body's true baseline rather than transient spikes. Emily's workshops included demonstrations of correct blood pressure measurement techniques and explanations of how to interpret numbers. She encouraged participants to keep a log over several days rather than obsessing over single readings and to share trends with their healthcare providers rather than isolated values. Emily also addressed the importance of context. Blood pressure should be viewed alongside other factors like symptoms, lifestyle, and medication adherence. Over-reliance on immediate morning readings could lead to unnecessary medication adjustments or stress. Her message was clear: blood pressure monitoring was a tool, not a source of fear. One of Emily's most powerful stories came from Robert, a stroke survivor who had once been terrified by his fluctuating morning blood pressure. After learning proper measurement techniques and timing, he felt more confident and less anxious, which helped stabilize his numbers and reduce his stroke risk. Emily also consulted with neurologists who explained that the morning surge in blood pressure was a critical period for stroke risk, making medication timing and lifestyle adjustments important but should be guided by careful monitoring rather than rushed measurements. Emily's blog posts on blood pressure timing sparked conversation among readers and healthcare providers. Many admitted they had been checking their pressure immediately upon waking without realizing the pitfalls. Some shared how adjusting the timing of measurements improved their health management and peace of mind. To broaden her impact, Emily collaborated with clinics to distribute flyers about blood pressure measurement best practices and hosted webinars with cardiologists and nurses. She aimed to empower older adults to take control of their health with knowledge rather than fear. In her own routine, Emily waited until she was fully awake, hydrated, and calm before checking her blood pressure, often mid-morning. She used a validated home monitor and logged readings consistently. This approach gave her a clearer picture of her cardiovascular health and allowed for more informed discussions with her doctor. Reflecting on the journey, Emily realized that well-intentioned habits could sometimes do more harm than good without proper guidance. Blood pressure monitoring was vital for stroke prevention but had to be done thoughtfully. She urged readers to resist the urge to check immediately upon waking and instead build a calm, measured routine that respected their body's rhythms. Emily closed the chapter with a powerful reminder: your blood pressure is a conversation, not a verdict. Listen carefully, measure wisely, and partner with your healthcare team. Informed awareness is your strongest defense against stroke after 60. By understanding the nuances of blood pressure measurement and timing, older adults could reduce anxiety, make better health decisions, and protect their brains from the dangers of mismanagement. Emily believed that knowledge was empowerment and that every step toward accurate monitoring was a step toward a safer, healthier future. She invited readers to join her in replacing fear with understanding and turning blood pressure checks from a source of stress into a tool for prevention and peace of mind. The morning mistake that can triple stroke risk after 60 is a habit so common it often goes unnoticed, even among the most successful and health-conscious people, except, as the story goes, Elon Musk won't make it. Emily had been investigating this silent danger for months, piecing together scientific research, expert opinions, and personal stories to uncover the truth behind this overlooked stroke trigger. The culprit? The combination of immediately jumping into intense physical or mental activity without proper warm-up or preparation right after waking. It sounds simple, but its impact is profound. After decades of research, neurologists confirm that sudden spikes in blood pressure, heart rate, and stress hormones during the first hour after waking dramatically increase stroke risk, especially in older adults. When the body is abruptly pushed from rest into intense action, whether it's rushing out the door for exercise, diving straight into work, or stressing over urgent tasks, it can trigger vascular events that the aging brain and heart are ill-equipped to handle. Emily recalled reading studies showing that stroke incidence peaks in the early morning hours, precisely when many people launch into demanding routines. This spike, known as the morning stroke surge, is linked to rapid increases in blood pressure, blood clotting factors, and vessel constriction. For adults over 60, whose arteries may already be hardened or narrowed, this surge is particularly dangerous. The story of Elon Musk came up in a casual conversation with a neuroscientist who noted that despite Musk's famously intense schedule, he reportedly follows strict morning routines that prioritize gradual warm-up and mental preparation before diving into work. While not everyone can follow Musk's exact regimen, the principle remains: rushing the body into stress without a transition can be deadly. Emily had met Margaret, a vibrant 65-year-old woman who suffered a minor stroke after one particularly stressful morning. Margaret described waking up, skipping breakfast, rushing through her medication, and then going for an intense walk without any warm-up. That sudden exertion caused a blood pressure spike, triggering a transient ischemic attack, an early warning stroke. Margaret's story was a wake-up call for Emily's workshops. She emphasized the need for gentle morning rituals that prepare the body gradually. This included hydration, light stretching, mindful breathing, and eating a balanced breakfast before engaging in vigorous activity. Emily introduced the concept of morning easing, a practice where older adults allow their bodies to wake up slowly, giving the cardiovascular system time to adjust. She explained how sudden demands on an unprepared body could cause tiny blood vessel damage or dislodge plaques, leading to clot formation and stroke. Experts she interviewed reinforced that proper warm-up wasn't just for athletes, it was essential for anyone over 60 aiming to reduce stroke risk. Emily also explored the mental side of this mistake. Rushing into a stressful day without calming the mind heightened cortisol and adrenaline, compounding physical risks. She taught participants to incorporate mindfulness or meditation early in the morning, creating a buffer against stress-induced vascular damage. Emily herself adopted these habits, setting alarms earlier to allow time for quiet reflection, hydration, light movement, and a nutritious breakfast before any demanding tasks. She noticed a remarkable difference in her blood pressure stability, mood, and energy. The change wasn't about adding complexity but about slowing down and honoring the body's rhythms. Emily's blog featured testimonials from readers who had made this shift and avoided strokes or recurrent events. One reader wrote that embracing a gradual morning routine saved her life and improved her quality of life. Another said it helped her control hypertension without increasing medications. The key takeaway Emily wanted to share was that prevention doesn't always require drastic measures, sometimes the simplest changes can have the greatest impact. Avoiding the morning mistake of rushing into intense activity or stress could reduce stroke risk threefold, according to recent studies. Emily urged her audience to rethink their mornings, replace haste with harmony, chaos with calm, and risk with resilience. She framed the morning not as a race but as a sacred time to nurture the body and mind. To broaden awareness, Emily partnered with stroke foundations to create educational campaigns highlighting this critical risk. They produced easy-to-follow guides and videos demonstrating safe morning routines tailored for older adults. Healthcare providers were encouraged to discuss morning habits during checkups and prescribe lifestyle adjustments as part of stroke prevention. Emily reflected on how cultural norms glorified busy, frantic mornings, often overlooking the quiet, slow starts that could protect lives. She challenged readers to break this cycle and prioritize their health with intention and care. The chapter closed with a powerful call to action: your mornings set the stage for your entire day, and your entire life. Don't let a simple mistake triple your stroke risk. Warm up your body gently, nourish your mind calmly, and move forward with awareness and love. Like Elon Musk's secret weapon, your morning routine can be your greatest defense. Emily believed that embracing this wisdom could transform not only individual lives but communities by reducing the devastating impact of stroke in older adults. The journey to prevention was within everyone's reach, beginning with one mindful morning choice at a time. Stroke might be unpredictable, but how we greet the morning didn't have to be. In the quiet moments before the day's demands, there was power to protect, heal, and thrive. Emily's hope was that every reader would take this lesson to heart and make their mornings a sanctuary of health and hope, turning potential tragedy into triumph. The story wasn't just about stroke prevention, it was about reclaiming life's mornings with grace, wisdom, and courage. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?